Good afternoon if you were in Central Time Zone, which is the only time zone that matters. Sorry, Tino, but it is. Central is the only one that matters. And
For me, time stands still.
And joining us today is Tino Struckmann, of course, and the
For me,
machine.
time stands still.
Oh, somebody has YouTube open. And joining us
Yeah,
today is Tino Struckmann, of course. Somebody has YouTube open.
Stand still.
Oh, somebody has YouTube open. And joining us
Yeah,
today
what-
is Tino.
Where's that coming from?
Somebody has YouTube. Find out in a minute.
Not me.
That would be you, machine.
Where's I have nothing open.
YouTube. Find out in a minute.
Not me. Great, we're starting with technical things.
You, machine.
Yeah,
have
no,
nothing
I
open.
had nothing open. Nothing open.
Because
No,
when
no,
I
I-
mute you, the echo goes away.
Great, we're starting with technical things.
Yeah, no, I had nothing open. Nothing open.
I am on the mic.
No, it's
Let me
not
try to
you.
stop my microphone for a minute.
I'm gonna jump out and come back.
Okay. Oh, wait, there we go. You're clear.
The mic. Let me try to
Oh,
stop
no,
my
never mind.
microphone for a minute.
Try it again.
I'm gonna jump out and come back.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Yeah, it's outer space. Yeah, it's. The
So
damn
we're
ground.
still good, no echo-ish.
Yeah, a little echo-ish. It's no big deal. Well, Tino is in a hole, apparently.
Well, no
according to
playback,
this
so.
thing. He's
How
in a
dare you call Los Angeles a whole?
Well, I mean, you know.
Well, I mean, at least we got rid of the rats on the balcony. Anyway. And I did notice there for a minute. I thought you got a new opener, and then I realized, no, you didn't. An hour later, it was still going.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have a shorter one, but it's no fun. I like the 2-minute and 51 open once in a while, you know.
You need to read in old speeches from Patton over and Churchill over it.
You can't.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Sure you can. Just a voiceover. You can just roll that over.
Yeah. Sometimes they get really mad, especially the Churchill ones. I've had them hit me.
Really?
Let's see now. Oh, there we go. I'm not
Are we
sure.
working?
Yep, there we go.
It was Discord.
Ah, there you go.
Oh, right. The thing I can now no longer figure out how to turn off on my computer.
Well, you
That's
figured
all right.
out how
I
to
can't figure out
turn
how
it
to use
on, and that's always the good thing.
Well, you are handling the technical thing, and I will officially, for everybody here, thank you for taking care of all the technical stuff and working on the website and helping putting all this stuff together, because now that I have like 6 more venues of communication to not follow or pay attention to, I'm really glad that you've taken the time, Robert.
Well, you know, I couldn't see you. Oh, is there still an echo? There shouldn't be. I don't hear one.
I don't hear one.
I don't hear one at all.
I have a split personality, so I always hear voices, but I don't think that's it. It shouldn't come through.
Still, there shouldn't be. Yeah, there's. Yeah, I don't. I if there was an echo, I'd hear it. So,
Right. So there's no echo.
Great, the feds are listening.
Okay, there we go. John DeMarco says good now. Okay, awesome.
Copy.
All right. So, yeah, well, I couldn't see you paying a whole bunch of money anymore and not anything getting done. So somebody had to do it.
I know.
And
Well,
the
that's
best
it.
part, my favorite, my feather in my cap will always be the fact that you spent what 6 hours on the phone with iPower's people.
Oh,
And they-
all of them repeatedly. That can't.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
won't.
and
not
I
even-
went in and what was it? 5 minutes, something like that. And I'm like, by the way, it's theme. Some idiot went and changed your theme.
I mean, but I do love one of the things that now that came out of this whole working from home pandemic thing is so awesome, because now everybody sits at home and not getting talking to each other or getting out or meeting coworkers. And not only here, because when I call customer support or customer service and they're sitting in the Philippines or in India, I can actually hear their children play in the background. So I'm glad it's not just here. People don't go to work anymore. So now I get an accent I don't understand and 16 people talking in the back.
I mean,
And
who am I to
no
talk?
one
I'm
seems to know
retired
what to
at
do.
32, but you know.
Not that I mind. I by now have lots of people I actually would very much like to visit in the Philippines, but
I don't
Lots
get
of
the,
cats and dogs.
Tino.
I never get the Filipinos. I always get the Indians. Always everywhere I call it's always in, you know.
Well, AT&T have the Indians, I think, and the Philippines are for iPower, and
well, just be glad. Okay, all I gotta say to you two is just be glad that when you call and you're listening to the robot, you don't have to listen to it twice, once in English and then in French, because that's what I have to do.
Oh, are you close to Quebec?
Oh.
No, Canada. Period. You phone anything governmental, and they tell it to you in English first, then in French.
You're not in the French quota.
And then you have to wait till they finally give you the prompt to push one for English, so that you don't have to listen to them repeat it in French anymore.
Right. So now since we had this really interesting, in-depth 4-hour talk with Joseph and Shrimpton on Wednesday, where we talked about everything except what we were actually supposed to talk about, which amongst others was the Kennedy rifle. And I'm dying to know, since a whole lot of strange opinions and based on too much energy drinks came up on that history talk from then to present. You, machine, said there are things you don't agree with me on.
Man, you have.
And since we live in a free speech society, I'm okay with that. So.
No, I agree with you for the most part, but there are a few things, occasionally on these lives that I do kind of like go, wait, what?
Well, God knows I'm not always right, so that's why I like to hear it.
Well, no, when it comes to the whole JFK thing, which by the way I do believe was the last true Democrat president. I believe he was, when they knocked him off, that was the end. That was the end of the Democrat Party for me. I think it went worse. That was the
last of democracy, really, to some degree.
Yeah,
but that's a different story.
But that's a different story. But there was a couple of things in there. I've heard the grassy knoll thing and stuff like that over and over and over again. And like you said, it was a Carsano rifle, which actually, if it's polished like I did with my Mosin, it would be fairly accurate. He would be able to slide that bolt back very quickly and easily without.
I didn't mean the rifle was inaccurate. I meant the way the scope was shimmed up. They have to shim up the scope in order to actually test it somewhat accurately. Which means that's how I meant it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably agree with.
Yeah. No. The Carcano, I've got no particular problems with that, except if you and anybody who knows firearms and they know optics, especially older optics, then that if you sight in your rifle, the moment you disassemble that thing and you start carrying it around with you, especially under your arm in a supposed brown bag, setting it down, dumping it, the moment if you put it back together again, you'd have to re-sight it to be somewhat accurate, because you're going to lose a little bit of sight if you take it apart.
Absolutely.
So I thought it was another thing that it not only was if indeed I'll be the first one to say I don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy. I believe he was part of a much bigger picture, but I don't know. I don't think he did it.
We're in agreement with that. I don't believe he did it, but for people to say it's not possible is not exactly accurate. I mean, I was throwing hedge apples and hitting them with a bolt action, and racking back and hitting them as they were rolling and bouncing on the ground. So I know it's possible to hit a moving target. He
had a moving target, and as it was coming down the parkway, he had a fairly stationary target that he could have hit, because the moment the shots were supposedly fired was after the limousine started its turn at an angle, which would have been a worse time to actually take those shots.
Right, because I mean, look at my hand. That's basically what you're going. You're going at line of sight, and not only that, he was up on that floor. So now you got line of sight, and then you got this. So your picture sight alignment is going to be just horribly off.
But where Kennedy was shot was a perfect shot from the grassy knoll, because it was right there. And if you look at the Jim Mars blown up photographs that was taken, where you see Zapruder standing on one side right around that time, and it blows up and it shows a man in a rifle position facing Kennedy with somebody standing behind him. Plus, it was somebody in uniform. And if you were going to shoot the president and put on a police uniform to blend in, would be perfect. And also, if you start counting the rounds that was flying around Dealey Plaza, there were certainly more than 3 rounds flying around, which means there must have been more than Oswald, which means there must be a conspiracy. And if you work your way backwards from the investigation, you see clear signs of a cover-up of destruction of evidence. Like the limousine was never forensically checked. It was washed down within hours of him being shot, shipped out, repainted, rebuilt, never tested. Destruction of evidence. Somebody must have done that. And if you look at the Carcano, which one of the things we never talked about with the guys there, this is what we didn't talk about, is the Carcano can only fire with a clip. And you have 6 bullets in a clip. And they found 2, then 3, and then they a live round in the magazine. The clip was never found. Like I remember Shrimpton told me that the clip later was turned in, but the rifle wouldn't be able to fire without a clip. And why was there only 4 bullets when they would hold 6?
Right.
So there's just so many things.
What crossed me is, like you said, I believe there was more than 3 shots. I believe there was 5.
At least.
Yeah, I believe there was 5, but at the same time, what I was getting at with the rifle sight, picture sight alignment, and everything else like that, do I believe the book depository could actually have housed the shooter? Absolutely. I just don't think it was Oswald because of the angle.
Yeah.
But if you look at the windows, the first floor, second floor, whatever else like that, those windows, they had perfect sight alignment, and I mean the limousine was going a grand total of 5 miles an hour.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they said, well, it's impossible to get a headshot at a moving target. I'm like, yeah, you're wrong.
No. I've got with that. But when you look at the Zapruder film as it was finally presented to the public, that dark patch on the back of Kennedy's head that looked like it was painted over in a really rudimentary square looks like destruction of evidence. The day after they took the street side down, because they said, the Dallas authorities said, well, we're going to take the sign down because we don't want the bullet hole in it to remind people. So that's another bullet. Then there was one that grazed the ground. That's another one. And the whole one wonder bullet that supposedly went in through Kennedy and made a turn, and another turn, didn't hit any bones, another turn, and they came out somewhere completely different, parallel to where it exited, and entered Connolly's hand. No. Just if you look at it, just straightforward common sense, there's some problems with this. But again, if you work your way backwards and say, well, there was definitely a cover-up, everybody can agree to that. If there's a cover-up, then there was a conspiracy, just by common sense. And you can say the same thing about 9/11. If there's a cover-up, if there's questions not asked, just look at the 9/11 committee. What Bush has set that up for $13 million to do that investigation. $30 million in Washington. I mean, that's lunch on a bad congressional day. Yeah. That's nothing. I mean, and they never even discussed in there the tower that fell without. I mean, it was a tower 6, 7, 6.
7.
No, they did actually address that.
They did. What did they say about it?
Yes, they did. There was 3. The Port Authority said there was 3 factors that went on to that building. One being the sheer amount of force from the other 2 falling actually cracked the foundations on everything around within 2-block radius, including the stores. To the east side corner. Those buildings were actually almost completely cracked in like 4 or 5 places. But that building actually was burning and unchecked for hours. And when they said that, they said the slurry wall along with that goes along with the last thing I said. The slurry wall was actually damaged behind it. But what ultimately took the rest of it down was they said something about it. I'm trying to remember now. It was about the slurry wall and about how the full area around there within 100 yards was just giving way. Everything was just starting to crumble, and the building had just no structure left to it.
It's just a problem that it came down so evenly.
Perfectly.
It didn't sack it down. It didn't kind of one wall went and the next and then the next. It just went straight down in 11 seconds. And I didn't see much fire. But then they also said, the fire eroded the World Trade Center. and yet we have photos of people standing in the opening looking out. So the fire department, as I recall, they said they didn't need a second line on the radio. They didn't need a second line up because they had the fire under control, and they could put it out with the one line they had up there. So obviously the fire wasn't that big of a concern in the World Trade Center, and it's just.
But here I'll touch down on that with my background. ASTM 243 is as a high carbon plate. It will not take heat for very long. It's meant to let the building sway. Which those buildings, if you remember how they were built, you had a steel outer shell. Okay, you had the stairwell in the center, which is basically that was the main structure.
Yeah,
that's what everything was. When you damage that particular part of the structure, it wasn't so much the outer ring that was causing the problem; it was the inner ring. Once that broke, once that section finally had enough, and all the steel began to buckle. It's basically like taking I don't know if I got a washer here, but it's basically like taking this pen here and just, there's one.
It all went down around the center. I see where you're going.
And dropping the washer down it, what it does is it flowers out. It's just going to go like this. And that's exactly what the buildings did. I slowed down the footage myself and watched it, and I'm like, okay, the top 7 floors or whatever in the one building, just once they started, that building just started to flower out. And if you look at the aftermath photos at the bottom, all the buildings are like this. It was like I said, when it comes to metallurgy and stuff like that, it only takes so much heat to temper a piece of steel.
But you also have the steel girders that was making up a big part of it.
What's that?
I mean, there were steel girders throughout. I mean, it was built with steel reinforced inner structure. The skeleton was not soft steel.
No, the ASTM 243 is what they made the plates out of. That was to allow the building to have some give. Because I mean, just let's face it, a building that tall, if you have too much, if you have a high carbon steel, it's solid, but it's very brittle. It'll only take back and forth, a few times before that shear point.
Yeah,
just breaks off. But anytime you use the STM 243, if I was to go right behind me right now and take one of the pieces of bar that I got behind me and dip it in burn it in a bucket of diesel fuel for
your wife would be really pissed off.
Yeah, she would be. Well, it's my shop; she can deal with it. But I could instantly take it and actually almost even to the point of fracture. It'll just burn the carbon right out of it.
So basically, do you believe that 9/11 was 19 pissed off hijackers only?
No, I believe it was quite a few more. I don't believe in the whole. I hate to say this is going to hurt somebody's feelings. The whole conspiratard part of it. Okay, where the buildings were wired with thermite, and King Kong flew down on a majestic unicorn and teabagged those towers, and that's how they fell. That's not how it happened. But we did know that we were going to be attacked. We knew.
Yeah,
we absolutely knew. The problem was we didn't know where.
There were some coincidences on that day that was just staggering, like the military maneuver for the very same. That almost seems too coincidental. I think. Right. I mean, I have no problem believing that there were some amount of disgruntled Muslims that decided to fly planes into the trade center or do some sort of terrorism. But I do think there's more underlying to it. Just like Kennedy, if it was more than even a couple of guys that decided to take out the president. There's more behind it, even if they don't know. Right. And that's again we're looking at what almost looks like a cover up. We can go back to the history of most Western governments have always done this. Go back to did no one in the federal government know about Pearl Harbor?
Gulf of Tonkin.
The part
Gulf of Tonkin.
The part that I always found very coincidental is the fact that the Air Force's response operation orders changed right before 9/11. Before, they used to be able to scramble. Right before 9/11, that was changed. They had to have approval from the White House to scramble.
Right.
If they didn't have approval from the White House, they couldn't scramble the jets. So the time that it took to get that approval.
That was at the points at the same time when, and like I said, there was a lot of mistakes obviously made. We know it for a fact. Like I said, we knew for a fact that we were going to get attacked. But at that time, it was kind of like Tino said with World War II with Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
They bunched everything together thinking that was going to help because, the Japanese, on the island were going to be the ones to sabotage or whatever else like that.
And then they lost the Japanese carrier group.
Right.
Yeah.
How did they lose? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's almost the same situation as they made a really piss poor decision, and it compounded more piss poor decisions until we ended up with the end result.
World history have been defined by an enormous amount of false flags or false reasonings for invasions and wars. And that makes it scary. And just to make sure that they'll definitely ban you and shut you down now, Robert. When I hear,
we already had one of these go down for what was the first one we ever did went down for 24 hours for a hate speech. Yeah, that was it. Hate speech. That's what they nailed me for. Hate speech. Yeah, I got that rectified real freaking quick.
That is my only ban on my only strike against me is that I had a short video of about a minute I uploaded to a private server, privately on YouTube because I needed to send it to the guy in Poland because it was footage from the Russians' tanks rolling and building of the East Wall. No symbols, no sound, no nothing. Just a minute. Just is this not the right video? Yeah. And they took it down and cited hate speech. And this was Russian tanks rolling and German workers working. No, there wasn't even a swastika flag. No, nothing. No, and and then I said, "Well, this is nonsense." I took it down. Then they said, "Well," I went back to them. I said, "Well, I want this strike on because it's horseshit." I said, "No, we can't take it down because you removed the video." Well, you removed the video.
Yeah.
Right. They've done that to us several times,
and that goes with you for life. So, but no, what I was going to say is, if we have now gotten to a point, and the danger in where they, and I'm saying they advisedly, have brought us as the Western world and America, and there are people in Europe that are watching what's going on in America, wondering if that's what's going on, can or could or have happened in Europe. When you look at today, then we don't want to talk about the 2020 election. Don't talk about it. It's ancient, and now I hear people coming into office going, "Oh, we don't want to talk about it. Nothing happened." Nobody cares anymore. We need to look forward. Now, I'm not making a point if there was election fraud or if there wasn't. I have my very strong suspicions on that one, but it's not even about that. It's about the fact that we're not allowed to talk about it, and half of the American population believe that there was. And now you're going to say, "No, we go forward. We can't go for vengeance. We can't do this." But now trying to go forward it's like going forward with a car with two wheels, because half of the country will no longer buy into it unless it's cleared up and thoroughly washed out. And you have most of the country doesn't believe in the media or the politicians or the healthcare. So now we're at the point where half of the world doesn't believe what they say, and that is just a recipe for disaster. If we can't have free and open exchange of dialogue about the things that have happened, how can we move forward?
Think about it this way, okay? Let's you're a movie guy. Let's go backwards a little bit, way back. A Wonderful Life. Okay, let's start with It's a Wonderful Life, then move into 1984 and then V for Vendetta.
Yeah,
it's like the precursor to everything that's going on now. 1984, crossing into V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta, what did they do? They ran around in vans. They, had the disinformation governance board, basically, and they were making sure that nobody was talking bad about them or anything else like that, or else they would get arrested. That's exactly what they've been doing. I mean, it started to really uptick during the Obama administration. I was a victim of it myself. I was actually a victim of it. I was at a place wearing my press kit and everything else like that, and they said, "Well, you can't stand here." I'm like, and I, held my badge. I'm like, "Excuse me?" Like, "No, you cannot be here. The free speech zone is over here." And hold your ears, because this is exactly what I said back to him. I said, "Bitch, everywhere I go is a free speech zone." And the guy just looked at me. He's like, "Wait a minute." He's thinking, "Wait, press is not going to say it to me." I was like, "Move along."
The free speech zone is over there. He actually said that.
Yes, and they pointed at me and said, you got to go basically a block and a half, city blocks down the way to where you can only see the limousine from like 200 something, like 150 yards out. And you can't talk. They run the clusters all together, so we couldn't talk or take video or nothing else like that. Uh-huh. And I just smiled. I mean, I looked at him dead in the face, said, "Move along." And he's like, "No, you got to go down there." It's like, "No, I ain't got to do shit."
We now have the hallmarks of every totalitarian regime, whether they be communists or Marxists or fascists or Nazi, because first you stifle dialogue. And this is what I mean, there are people on both sides of the aisle who must understand this, even if you are, well, sadly, no, there are people on sides that do not understand because they don't want to hear what the other side is saying. They want to stifle their dialogue and put them in prison. And what is it? I think there's 65% of Democrats that was polled if they would have people have the people's children taken away if they wouldn't take the vaccine, for one. This was some time ago. And they said yes. And we are looking at people who are so divided that we go back to globally and ask ourselves, well, how could educated, intelligent people of Germany and lawyers and doctors take part of deliberately killing women and of exterminating a race? Well, if you precursor that with there's an inherent distrust in Jews at the time. That's go back way back. It's not specific to Germany, but if you jump on that and you then take over your media and all information and schools, and you start telling everybody that these people are animals and the reason why your life is terrible. And Hitler had the schools for 5-6 years and promoted everybody who already believed that. And the same thing is said about if you want to take over, destroy America, it will take one generation through schools to put in position to destroy the country. Now we have 3 or 4 generations that have been through colleges that generally hate this country and then the foundation and the Constitution. And I think this is an amazing country with amazing possibilities. But half of the people living here no longer understands why this is an amazing country. And they want to turn it into something they've never experienced. And by the virtue of them having the schools, the press, the media, and again, I'm not really taking sides, because even if you are a leftist today, well, you're feeling pretty good because your message is the only one that's broadcast, and you're now strong enough that you can take up arms and or burn down people's houses, threaten judges, or whatever you want to do on your point of view. But anybody comes to the defense of the victim will be the one that's persecuted. Well, we are not very far from Nazi Germany. We already have a generation that's now sitting on a large part of the population who are willing to destroy the other half because they don't want to hear what they have to say.
But yet we're considered the domestic terrorist triple Nazis. Yes. We make Hitler look like a fucking puppy or something. Yeah. That's how they see me. That's how they see you. That's how they
Well, and the funny thing is from my perspective, it's so funny because being up here in Canada, we got that idiot Trudeau in Ottawa, but
you mean Justin Trudeauovich, the communist little prick.
Anyway, so he's riding on his daddy's coattails. But at any rate, moving on from that idiot,
he's riding on something that ain't a coattail.
Oh, there's that. It's funny to me because anybody who has even a vague listened for 5% of their history class can sit down and go, there's a pattern here. And, there's a pattern here. And hello, wake up. Because the words that are thrown around way too freaking easy is communist. Yeah. If they don't like it, it's communist.
Or Nazi.
If they don't like it, it's Nazism. Right? It's all like, I remember when I was, in high school, we used to have something called a debate. They don't debate anymore because if you sit at the podium and in this debate, you're not allowed to use buzzwords. Well, now you're going to have about 5 minutes of silence because most people who debate, that's all they know is the buzzwords.
Yeah.
They don't know anything in depth of the topic. They just know that they've been given 5 buzzwords that they're supposed to use in succession, and that's their argument.
But that's why we just had a political election here where half of the candidates did not want to debate the other half because they really cannot. And let's vote some more dead people in office, shall we? Because if you are so indoctrinated, if you're so indoctrinated in your political belief that you're willing to vote for somebody dead who's been dead for 7-8 months just because you don't want the other guy to win, you may want to have your head examined.
I mean, honestly, I thought that, the fact that there are Canadians that vote for the Bloc Québécois was stupid enough, and then you go and vote in a dead guy.
Dude, no, yeah, but we got Mr. Potato Head too. We got Fetterman.
Oh,
Fetterman is a potato. The only thing I can think of every time I see that man is the movie Goonies.
Okay, but
hey, you guys!
Yeah.
Machine. You just insulted the entire continent of Ireland. You called him their national.
I'm okay with it. I'm not Irish.
like, don't insult the starches. Irish are going to.
I like the Irish. I'm just going on record here.
Yeah, but see, but then again, I'm also insulting the Ruskies.
Oh, there's that too.
They do like
I have a couple of friends that live in
Ireland. Made from potatoes, and I usually call Ruskies russets.
Yeah, well, my favorite is I have a friend in in Ireland called Revan, and I always ask him. It says, "How in the blue hell did the Russians beat the Irish to making vodka?" Right?
Right.
Like, how in the blue hell did the Russians beat the Irish to making vodka?
Exactly. When you're talking this was pre-YouTube, like TikTok or whatever else like that. We were screwing around with a video camera one time, and we said we were driving to a buddy of mine's house who is Irish. We're like, well, he's not answering the phone. He's this was payphone era, by the way. We're knocking on his door. He's not answering the door. And in the video, all we did was throw a potato in his yard, and he comes running out the door. I mean, it was a standing joke between us.
Yep.
But you can't do that stuff nowadays. You can't do that Brookside thing.
Yikes!
All right. So, what is the history of vodka? Who was the very, very first? I mean, there must have been some trial and error going on.
It was Russia, isn't it?
I mean, that's certainly what we're believing, but was it?
Yeah,
I guess research should have been done on this.
That would be something interesting to look into. I mean, Russians have claimed it anyway.
Russians claim a lot of things.
Well, and the
right now that their retreat is a win in the war.
Yeah, well, see, my theory is, and this is my theory until it's proven wrong. Like most good science.
Science.
What the hell is that? But basically, the Irish and the Scottish were too busy arguing over who made whiskey that they forgot about vodka.
I think what we need to go with is a good idea. Is a good idea no matter who came up with it. But it's interesting because if we go and look at the complete lack of history education, which means you have generations who knows very little about the real events, so they really don't want to talk to people who lived through them because they will not agree with their current worldview. And in debates, if you can't say, well, you can't say socialist or communist or Marxist, but throwing it as what you mean Nazi, that's fine. I have seen several members of a specific political party in this country who have quoted Adolf Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, in their statements, but of course not credited to them.
No, of course not.
And because everyone have said smart things. Stalin had said smart things in his time.
Yeah,
you're not going to get to where these people were without having a few good ideas.
But
it's the underlying,
to apply to the United States, we could use a Stalin quote. It's not the person who casts the vote; it's the person who counts it. I'm just saying. Whoever
prints them up in the middle of the night. I always we hear we are there's so many people who sit around the world, and they're in the same boat in Europe as well, where there's been several elections. The Swedes just elected the first quite right of center government in quite a while, because they're tired. For some reason, the Swedes grew tired of mass rapes and bombings and stabbings and immigrant violence, so they elected a right of center government. And then you can take Denmark, where prices are skyrocketing, immigration from everywhere, violence, and no one talks about, a whole lot of things, and they just voted for the same socialist prime minister because she promised to change and form a government over the center. And I don't know, politicians who are up for election or re-election will pretty much say anything in order to get elected. We sort of know this. And I would, and the same thing we talked about on Wednesday, and I'll ask you guys the same thing. From a point of psychology and a point of history, looking forward, hoping that someone will at some point in time be able to share with me a positive forward that does not, a way out of the mess we're in that does not involve mass violence. Because I'm scared to death that I don't see a way out of this. And I think a lot of people, especially after not having really cleared up the election problem, a lot of people, they don't either. So that was, well, why bother voting? It doesn't matter. Sooner or later, it's going to come to a fight. And it's scary where this is going. The left has always been willing to a fight because communists are always ready for a fight. And then the hapless conservatives are sitting on their hands and go, oh, well, it'll be fine. We'll somebody else next time.
Yeah, the whole place is burning around them. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and now we're gotten to the point where half of them no longer believe that they can vote their way into a more positive direction for the country.
So they don't vote.
So they don't vote. And now, where's this going to go?
And that's how you end up with a Fetterman. I mean, I'm sorry. That guy's going to be my patsy for a while, and it's not because he had a stroke. It's because he was an idiot before he had the stroke. But
yeah, I agree.
This is the way I told everybody. He's like, everybody's afraid to vote their conscience. They say, well, if I vote for this guy, then that means I'm giving the vote to that guy. If I don't, I was like, no, the two-party system is bullshit. You have other options, but everybody's too afraid to use them. I keep telling them that. So you vote your conscience, and sooner or later it's going to work. It's like right now you got basically, I'm going to say it in a fun way, I guess. You got two pieces of shit. Which one is going to be the piece of shit with sprinkles on it? Yeah. And
but we're running into the problem that let's say this, and I'll be the first one to say, sitting down here, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm a historian. But if I am anything, I guess I'm close to an old school libertarian centralist who wants small government and freedom for all. I want women to be safe and happy. I don't care if gay people get married. Good on you. You need to suffer divorce like the rest of us.
I was gonna say, you can give her half your stuff.
Live your happy and don't urinate on your neighbor's yard. Very, very common sense. Work hard, you make money. But I want to keep the money I make if I work hard. We're now at a point where, let's say, the establishments, they pick, and again, I don't want to take politics. I don't want to take side on politics, but we have to use examples. So the current shithole we're in, maybe we'll use that. If DeSantis gets the Democrat nomination, and then Trump says, fine, all right, I'm going to run as an independent, then the Democrats are going to win. And Trump would probably be the best independent candidate that's been in many, many years in this country, not taking anything from Perot, but he's still not going to win because of the way the elections are set up. So what are you going to do?
There's a second scenario to that. And that is what happened when Hillary ran. So let's say DeSantis gets it. Let's say DeSantis gets the Republican nomination. He gets the nod. But he beats Trump in the primary. And then Trump doesn't run. So then you get half of the Republican Party pissed off because Trump should have got it. Which is what happened to Hillary, because half of the Democratic Party was pissed off because their other boy should have got it.
Yeah. And but nobody really liked, sorry, Hillary, but nobody really liked her. No. She was not really a very well-rounded candidate. But I wish that that what we could have. I wish we could have a Trump DeSantis ticket. I don't think we're going to.
No, because they can't get along.
They always got along until a couple of weeks ago, didn't they?
Well,
I thought they got along until then.
Here's the thing, and this is just from the Canadian who doesn't know shit. But anyway, the observation I've made about the two parties is as such. If the Republican Party went took Trump and Santos into a room and went, look, you two are going to run together. We can't have the fracture of the party. The best thing for the party is for you two to run together.
Yeah.
Once that decision is made, the Republican Party falls in line.
Yeah.
Once a decision within the Republican Party is made, it's followed. The problem the Democrats have is it's not. Quite simply put, it's not. I mean, look at, for evidence of this, let's go back to Obama. When Obama won his first term, he had the House and the Senate, Democrat, majority. He couldn't get shit through because his own party wouldn't back him. If it was a Republican leader, I will go on record stating everything that the president wanted would have gotten through with flying colors. Why? Because that's how the Republicans work. The Democrats don't.
Well, you know what? I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit, given that the first 2 years of Trump, where they had the House and the Senate, they got damn all done.
True.
Because nobody. And I think that the Democrats have solidified as a party where no matter what insanity, and I'm sorry to my Democrat friends, but some of the policies that's going forth are outright insanity. It counters common sense, and I'm sorry, the Democrats today are not the Democrats 40 years ago. But hey, at some point in time, you have to look at yourself within a human being. You're like, this is just not smart. But they still unify behind it. You seem to unify behind an agenda, and then you have, of course, the speakers, where you have McConnell, who will not put anybody on any committee unless they vote for him. And right. I actually heard a very interesting thing. FTX, and this was Joseph that told me, FTX gave what were millions of dollars to the Democrat Party, and apparently also gave money to McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
Can anybody explain that? If that's true, we have a Democrat pact giving money to McConnell. I like that.
Always follow the money.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but they keep kicking me out of the bank after hours.
well,
he's eating chocolate.
With modern speak, I should be able to. Oh, those are good. With modern speak and modern terminology, I should be able to identify as a millionaire, and the bank should recognize it, but they don't allow this. This is bullshit.
Funny, right?
Just saying. But it's the problem I find is I don't think it's going to come down to a civil war within the United States. I don't think so. What I think is going to happen is what's happened in past, and Tino, you're more knowledgeable on this than I am, so you can correct me where I'm wrong, which is probably everywhere. But anyway, what I see happening is a distraction.
Yes. Well, sorry, that's easy.
A major war. A major war, an attack on American soil. Nothing galvanizes the United States like an attack on American soil. So all you need is one thing to go wrong, and then everybody's focus is no longer on political debate, anything like that. They don't care anymore because this big bad over here effed up, and we got to go fuck them up.
Well, here's something that'll actually surprise you, Robert. Especially like on TikTok and stuff like that. Would you believe I'm actually fairly popular with the Canadians?
Wouldn't surprise me.
I wouldn't believe you're on TikTok, but all right, go on.
Very funny.
I'm a little sad. I'm a little saddened here. Okay.
I know. It hurts. It just on a point.
It hurts
I know what he's getting
because I'm on it as well. I don't advertise it because it's just me ranting. I've got 2 rant videos.
That's all I do. Yeah, I say that's all I do is rant and stuff like that too. But usually they get like 16,000
The
views.
one rant video I did was because I was in a lot of pain. I was on. I just got out of dialysis. I was in a lot of pain, and I'm laying there and I'm just scrolling, just dead scrolling, right? And there's this idiot on my screen, and he's going on and on about how people on disability and welfare take all his money and yada yada yada, and I just hit stitch and my full temper came out. It was just, listen here, dipshit. It was just, full on,
One of the best ones I got is actually I was in defense of Canada, especially with the Ottawa and a few other things, and I couldn't believe what I heard. I was listening to your news. I had it on my computer. I'm like, I'm listening to your parliament. I'm like, why am I doing that? I'm not even in that country, but I'm curious. And that was about the time when Trudeau comes out and says the right wing in Canada, they allow people to they align themselves with white supremacists and people who wave swastikas. And I knew about the woman who he was talking to. I'm like, her family's a Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. You can be a Nazi just because you're Jewish.
Yeah.
I know that.
Don't you know?
Well, here's the fun part with Trudeau. I hate to say this, but he's taken on a whole new line of stupid. Because the problem with it right now is no matter what he does right now, the Conservatives are getting in next election, whether he likes it or not.
You say that now. Who's counting your votes?
Well, see, we get them done in a day. I'm just saying. But
are you listening, Arizona?
We get them done in a day.
But
I
gotta jump on a word that Alan just wrote that we don't have to talk about right now, but there's something that Alan put in the chat. Digital slavery. And I think that is something we should unpack, because that is literally where we're going on so many levels. Now I said it, now I can forget it. Anyway, but I think that is part of the problem of where we're going. We are going into digital slavery, digital dictatorship. And if you combine that with a one world government, a takeover, a digital passports for everything, to vaccine to whoever, a digital currency, then it'll be able for them to control everyone, which means you have no say, because if you don't play ball, you don't get food on the table. And you just listen to what Klaus Schwab, the megalomaniac nut job sitting out in Swiss Alps with his little pussycat, telling everybody that the world belongs to everybody else but you. It's terrifying. Nobody elected this Muppet. Nobody elected the people in the UN. Nobody elected the people in the EU. And you have these unelected people, because I think they really don't want elections. They want at least elections to be as non-threatening to their power structure as possible, because that's not what they want. They want to take this to the next step. And digital dependency is part of it.
Yeah, but here's the fun part. The UN already has the voting structure in place. We vote like the UN. Every country has one vote, right?
But nobody votes for the Muppets sitting there.
Veto. So every country one vote. Yay, that sounds great. The only problem is 5 countries have a damn veto, so it doesn't matter what the vote is. The other thing too. I mean, up here in Canada, I always make the joke. The Canadian Liberals were really, really strategic and really smart when they chose their colors, because it confuses the Americans. Because your Republican Party is red, right? Well, our Liberals are red.
Yeah, that's not confusing at all, is it?
Conservatives are blue. just to confuse everybody.
Yeah, but think about the politics here versus the politics, like, let's say, over in Europe. Everything is backwards. Like when they're saying right wing over there, they actually mean left wing. When it's by ideology standards, it's all different. I did a video about this.
With us, we've got the 3 main parties: the NDP, which are the real woke, controlled by the unions. and then you have the conservatives, and then you have the liberals, and then you have the useless party called the Bloc Québécois.
Now tell us how you really feel.
Well, the reason that, okay, let me explain how stupid the Bloc is. The Bloc Québécois is a federal party, so they run for prime ministership every federal election. Here's the problem: they can only be voted for by people who live in Quebec.
Yeah, that's very unfair because most elections in America, you can vote for anybody, anywhere, everywhere, as many times as you want.
Right. So they run federally, but they can only be voted for by people who live in Quebec, which means they're never getting anywhere near prime minister. They just don't have the numbers in Quebec. So that would be like a person running for president, but the only people who can vote for him live in Texas.
Oh, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm not.
If you would have said California or New York, we'd have had issues.
The only person that can vote for them lives in LA. You know.
And now I got
oh, God. All right, fine. Yeah,
okay, right. So there you go, right? So, yeah, it's just crazy because it's insanity. Because they'll never get. It's a wasted vote, is what it is. It's a way to keep it's a way to keep it so that the conservatives and the NDP and the liberals never get a majority.
And I'm still seeing us down the line getting to a point where eventually we'll just be obsolete because they do not really think that we know what best for us anyway. Just like they don't want the parents to have a say in their kids' education because what do they know? With the health department, with the big pharma, we are resembling. I mean, at least America is getting to the point where we are resembling the setup of the Third Reich, very much so, where we are run by industries donating to politicians and following their guidance, for lack of a better word. And we look at the politicians, then we still have to look at who's behind them and who's running these people. And you see, again, private business entity people like Schwab and Soros and Bill Gates and these people who are now pushing these. But they're not elected, but they have power because they have money, they have influence. So it's not the same as the Third Reich. You had these big wealthy businessmen pushing Hitler, and everyone looks at Hitler as this madman dictator, and we can decide to say otherwise than he was a dictator. But there was people behind him, and there were policies that he put in place that was absolutely pushed and influenced by the bankers and businesses that put him there.
Well, look at who Hitler had around him too. I mean, he had just a bunch of sycophants. That's all he had.
Yeah,
you know.
But he also had industry that many times was safe from any kind of persecution or anything because they gave to the party. They put him there.
Yeah. One of the biggest recipients of that was Goering.
Goering was a big moneymaker. And he got along. He could speak with the aristocracy and the big industry, the big business, because they looked up to him, and he was closer to it. And he had Karen, he was married to. He almost, by default, almost had some royalty by that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Hitler brought Goering so fast into the inner circle so fast, because they didn't speak much after the putsch, and Goering was very disaffected. Remember, after the putsch, or the attempt in 1924, Goering was shot and wounded, shot in the groin. Miserable time. Him and Karen made it to Austria over the border. He was sick on morphine. He was miserable. They had no money. Everything they had was confiscated. They had to sell their things, their furs, everything, in order to buy. The deal was Hitler was suggesting Goering to go to Italy to meet with Mussolini and try to get funds for the party, which Goering then did, again, on practically no money. Those inner war years after the putsch, Goering and Karen had nothing. He was trying to fly, but he was still injured. He was sick. He was on morphine. Her family sent them little gold and some furs, some things to sell, so they could just live. And in the middle of this, Mussolini never met with Goering at that time. And Goering was incredibly angry at the Italians because they strung him along, literally living on nothing for a year. I think they were in Milan and they were in Venice as well. And Chano and others kept telling him, yeah, we're setting up a meeting, we'll set up a meeting. He lied to Karen because he was so ashamed that he was actually being treated like a nobody that he had a meeting with Mussolini today. But at the same token, he was so disappointed in Hitler because he kept writing him, I need help, I need money, I need something. And Hitler didn't send him anything either. And then they went to Sweden, where he had another miserable time, but he at least he was actually put in an asylum for a while to overcome his drug addiction. And he did. And then finally, when we came to we went back to 29 or 30s, when the Nazis stood stronger, Hitler was out of jail, that's when Goering came back, and Hitler found him useful. And I think there was, I don't know if Goering ever overcame the dispassion he had for both the Italians and maybe a little bit for Hitler as well, because he left him out in the cold for a long time. And I think if that's a bit of psychology at Goering was all about flash and titles. He gave up his pension, his World War I pension, he shouldn't have done, because he was actually only a lieutenant. But he said if they retired him as a captain, he would give up his pension. So they retired him as a captain because of status. It would look good, but he had no money. So for all these years until the Nazis came into power, Goering really had nothing. And then from one day to the next, we had all these businesses, Lufthansa and all this industry that was courting him because now he had power and he could give them business and contracts. And they rained money on him. And he became this extravagant. People look at him, this nut job.
Yeah, his white tidy uniforms. I mean,
playing with diamonds, and he literally had a bag of hundreds of diamonds we just play with. I think he that really took a psychological effect on him, having lived like a squalor for those years. That now he finally had riches, he was going to show it. Was the psychological of that? Actually, Goering is very interesting, and when he wasn't on drugs, he was actually a very smart guy, and that's why Hitler needed.
No, go ahead.
How did we get here?
Well, and even when the war was completely lost, Goering still didn't lose his, he wanted to keep that status. And remember, he sent that letter to Hitler saying, "If you don't answer, I'm going to take over." It was still
which was right, which was the right thing for him to do. And Bormann is the one that convinced Hitler that Goering was trying to putsch him and kick him out. But according to the orders he had, he was still the deputy Führer. And if the Führer was hated or in, he was to take over. That's according to the orders he had. But the way and how that was presented to Hitler through Bormann, threw Hitler into a fit and took him all his posts and so on. But Goering was still trying to negotiate with Eisenhower. He was expecting after his surrender to have a meeting with Eisenhower to formally continue running the Reich. He saw himself as the last actual Führer. And I don't know. It's would you really read Goering's life and his story and what he went through? And I don't know. He's I hate to say it. I always catch flack for this. He's not as unlikable as you would think if you understand why he became what he was. And there's quite a lot of examples of how he tried to hold his hand over various Jewish persecution. I don't think he was on that particularly, although there's other instances where he was. It's hard to say. You really have to go into the dialogue. And if you look at the Nuremberg trials, that's not really a fair representation of what he did, because the prosecution picked the files they wanted. The Allies sat on all the files. The defense were only allowed to pick to defend him what files the prosecution gave them, which means they're, a little bit like January 6th. You don't have a chance when the whole apparatus is against you, and that's. I'm still annoyed for the sake of humanity that we couldn't have had a truly honest Nuremberg trial. Not sure the outcomes would have been different, but it should have been honest, and there should have been a proper defense, both to understand what happened and to understand the mindset of people, because we're seeing that being repeated today. And now we are surrounded by teenagers who have no idea who Hitler was, no idea what happened in Pearl Harbor, barely remember 9/11, all the pivotal events that brought us here. We have an enormous population part that doesn't understand or don't remember, and we have politicians who do not understand. And then we have other politicians who truly understand because they are doing the same thing.
Well, to your point, I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm just talking out of my arse, but that's okay. That's YouTube. That's what we do. You know, I'm pretty sure if you went like just talk to average people in the United States and you said Gulf War, their immediate thoughts would be Bush Jr., not Bush Sr.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, but then, yes. And of course, you can rewrite every event slightly, and that's what's. I would love to see. I don't even know if they teach history in grade school, high school, college. Actually, teach history.
What's this history?
Exactly. And which history? Well, which version of it?
Well, I mean,
more scary.
It's crazy because, like, even my son, who's 18 in high school. Just hearing the stuff that he's learning, I'm just like, really? That's what they're going on? What the fuck? I mean, half of the stuff he knows history-wise, it's because of me drilling it into him.
Well,
yep.
Think about it this way, Robert. Not too long ago, and I'm talking just a few short years ago, I was able to walk into my local high school, my local junior high, and actually help teach history classes. I would bring in a lot of my like my relics and stuff like that and talk about it. If I walked into one of those schools now with my relics, I'd be on the national news and they'd have me arrested.
Yeah.
And it's not oh yeah, if are you kidding me, if I walked in that room with that DRK flag, they'd have a heart attack because it has a swastika on it. I mean, sitting right behind me right now is actually a food poster from World War I. I got stuff from here on World War I just sitting on my desk right now. But I mean, I wouldn't even be able to show them the photos that I have or any of the the tangible artifacts that I have.
True.
Because they will lose their shit. They don't teach them this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
How are you going to teach history if you can't show it?
Right. And I ran into this because I had a history teacher here ask me, what kind of stuff I have on the Holocaust. And I said, basically, what do you want to know? And I was like, I can make a phone call and in a matter of minutes have a third generation Holocaust survivor online with us. I could patch him into the feed at the school, use my laptop or whatever else like that. And it was actually shot down because they didn't want him on the screen. I'm like, why? His family lived this. So as did mine, but in a different way. But this is how I can teach you. This is how we teach people with the knowledge that others carry, especially ones who've had families affected by it. And they said absolutely not. We won't do that, and you're not allowed to bring this, and this, because I had to show them exactly what I had, and what so that way I could get their approval on what I could bring in.
Well,
they refused.
What blows my mind is, and this started even back when I was in high school. So we're going back a little ways. It started back then, because I remember I got a teacher like yelled at, which was great for me. I mean, my ego went through the roof that day, but it was right near Remembrance Day, and we had a quiz, and the question was, who won World War II? Now, I answered Canada, the United States, and the Allies. I got it wrong. The answer was the United States.
Huh.
So we had Remembrance Day, and I handed the test to a veteran who was in World War II. I pointed the teacher, and then I got to hear him yell at her for about 15 minutes. It was great. My ego for about 5 minutes.
Well, kind of a similar topic, I guess, with school, but we had a test one time. This is when I was in junior high. And even then I had a real, I had a real knack for history. I really loved it. I started learning stuff back then. But what cracked my teacher up is we had to use certain words and write it in a sentence, and mine was Bolshevik. So I wrote my actual answer, but on the back of the paper, but on the front of the paper where the test actually was, I put, "This test is a bunch of Bolshevik." Teacher was crying. She let out this, this gut wrenching laughter. She's like, "Come here right now." She's like, "What's your real answer?" And I was like, "Flip the page over." And she goes, "Thank you, but don't ever do that again."
Well, and there was a funny exam in my last year that we did. We had to, because I left in grade 9, and then I returned for adult ed, right? So we had to come up with a quiz. It was part of our homework to come up with a test to give to the class, right? So I came up with this 20-page test. And the first page was all instructions. So you start off and you go, instruction 1, name right-hand corner. Instruction 2, date left-hand corner. And you just go down and down and down. On the flip side of the first page, on the back side, there was one last instruction. Turn your test over and write "done" on the final page. Not a single person in that class did it. They sat there trying to go through all these long answer questions that I had written down in this 20-page booklet, and they had 15 minutes to do it. And they all missed that last instruction because it was on the other side of the page.
One of the worst things I've ever seen along the lines of that is actually, Tino laugh about this, the ASVAB. I have actually seen a person get a 7 on the ASVAB. You get so many points for writing your name correctly. I mean, so, how do you get a 7? But I mean, think about it. There's 3 things. Okay, this is basically how the ASVAB test is. There's 3 things. Which one of these doesn't belong? There's 2 bolts and a washer. Which one doesn't belong?
Yeah.
Or there's 2 bolts and and the computer mouse. Which one doesn't belong in there? And people would actually screw that up. But I seen a guy actually get a 7, and I'm like, please don't join. That's like.
Do we still have the berserker routine? Yeah, good, because that's where he's going.
I mean, it's interesting because I think what we see, especially in American education system, is we have gotten to a point where there's no more. They're not teaching think independently and evolve. They're teaching people to regurgitate information. They're training the next generation to be good robots, to be good followers, to be able to punch the little picture of the burger and then the picture of the fries, and then read the number on the register and then take the money. And I think that we've seen that trend for a long time, and it sort of fits in with what I'm hearing some of these globalist nutters say. There's not going to be jobs for everybody. Give them universal money, dumb them down, give them drugs, free weed, whatever, and have them play video games because there's not going to be anything for them to do. They're just useless eaters. And that's a term that I've heard squeaked out past microphones by quite a few of these people. And that should scare everyone, especially the ones who are going to school who know they're not coming out as a grade 8 student. But I think we would need, and that's what scares me, is I don't see the complete overhaul of everything of our society, because we would literally need to overhaul the whole concept of colleges and education systems. We need to send more people to technical colleges and learn how to do things physically, because when the light goes out, because guess what, windmills and solar panels are not going to power our modern country for a very long time to come. So now we're going to look at power outage and how you're going to survive when that happens, when you can't fix the damn electrical car you bought. I mean, there's so many things that we no longer can do as a people because we're not even taught to think that far. And exactly. I think that's where it starts.
And there's one thing that that doesn't happen nowadays, obviously, because you got Google and everything else like that, and Google seems to be everybody's daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Books. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
People don't read anymore. I actually have a very good sized library. A lot of the arguments that I get into, especially like on here, I was like, oh, they'll go like, oh, that's wrong. The Google page said this. I'm like, yeah, well, this says otherwise.
Yeah. And that's the problem. They're getting the digital information that you're allowed to find or see or read.
Right.
I try to never use Google. I always use any other search engine. If I have to go to the dark web to look something up to actually get the information, the answers. If not, I'll order some books that was written before 1985, if I can help it.
Exactly.
But it's interesting when you talk about freedom of speech. I went to university in Denmark, and there was speaking of how open-minded we were back then, was at that time the head of the Danish Nazi Party was a professor at the university, and he was he was still teaching because he was a good professor at what he was teaching. He just happened to also be the head of the Danish Nazi Party, and why not? There was a lot of the faculty, they were Jewish. They got along. They just have different opinions. It was really weird. And because not a problem. That's what he believes. That's fine. And I'm not saying we need to go there now, but I think we need to start who's actually teaching our kids, who's creating our news, and who's running the scenario globally. And I think that's hopefully is one of the things that's going to come out of what's happening today is more people will hang on for a minute. We'll just shut for a second.
Yep. So like the other thing too, like when like I do research for this channel, a lot of times I will admit I'll take a look at the wiki just because it's accessible, and then I'll go and find it on 3 other websites. If I can find it on 3 other websites that are credible, then I'll accept it. If I can't, then it goes in the gutter.
Yeah, but who makes the credibility?
Me.
That's always the question too. Who says it's a credible source?
Well, and not only that, but I always put it to my son this way: when you're reading a book, and I don't care who wrote it, right? That's what you need to find out: who wrote the book.
Yes, and what was his agenda with it
when they wrote the book?
Yeah,
right?
That's why I have literally, and I'm not kidding. I'll send you photos of it sooner or later. I think Tino's seen some of the photos of my book collection, but I have well, one of my books is it's literally titled "The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich." It was written in 1967. Back in the day, but I have multiple different editions and publications from different publications of that very same book for a very specific reason.
Yes.
That's how that's same thing with dictionaries, and stuff like that. I have all those. I have first, second edition, third, third, whatever, and stuff like that. So that way I know. I mean, okay, you can look at them, like especially with that book with the fall of the Third Reich. I noticed a few discrepancies. I mean, the book is it's several hundred pages long. It's a big book. And the more I started reading it, the more I'm like, okay, there's a couple sections in here where I'm calling bullshit. And I open up another book and read this, technically the same section, so to speak, and they would say it differently. Yeah, I've been trying to teach kids on how to do this, on how to get that information so you can compile it together. That's the reason why we're, why the term historian, because we don't just settle for whatever's in one thing. We're like, no, we want to know more about this. We got to get all of this and compile it together. Yeah. And
a good way to go approach history and studies while there's books or documents is you have to ask yourself, why was a book or a document written? Why does it exist?
Yeah.
What is it to do? What was the authors of it trying to do? Is the author of, if it's a document or even a book, is the author, or was he in a position to actually have the knowledge that comes from the book? If it's a way post-war research in depth, you're fine. But if it's life memoirs and you're reading a book about a corporal on the Eastern Front that was all of a sudden put in charge of a Jewish transport and reported directly to Himmler, and like, yeah, maybe that's not true.
Yeah.
You always have to ask yourself questions, especially after the war. Why did a lot of the Nazis write books? First of all, they couldn't write a book about anything other than the national narrative, the accepted narrative by the Allies, because the Allies had to approve everything they wrote or it wouldn't get published. And if they wrote something that would adverse, they wouldn't be able to work. They maybe wouldn't give a pension and put in jail. So you have to be wary of the primary source writings from the Second World War, given the policies afterwards. And then you have to find, well, it was something what a guy published it in Argentina. Okay, maybe he then wrote the truth, or he wrote it to exonerate himself. Again, what is it? Why does it exist? You always have to ask yourself these questions. You see the same thing in politics today. All of a sudden, documents. And okay, now I'm going to go out on a limb now. Now you are going to. I'm making a political prediction. You're all one now. It never happened before. Never going to happen again. Now, first thing we did is now we're going to have the great reckoning with Hunter and Biden and Joe, and now we're going to go after them, and we are going to find out how corrupt Joe is and blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Yes, by all means. If you have nothing to hide, let's find out what he's got in his bag. And, of course, the Republicans coming in, we are going to investigate. I will bet you that there will be now documents that are going to surface that could only have surfaced because somebody on the Democrat Party wanted them to surface, because now it's time for Joe to go.
Yeah.
And you always have, where did the provenance of this come from? Like the Supreme Court leak. Where do these things come from? Who are these people? And why do we all of a sudden see it now? Because it serves somebody's political future. Right. Nothing happens by chance.
Well, look at distraction.
Yeah.
Well, look at, you're talking about how, them writing their own books and stuff like that. Look at what Goebbels did. Look at what Albert Speer. Look at, even Eva Braun.
Yeah. Well,
they all wrote. Yes, Ava. You didn't know that?
Ava wrote a book.
Ava wrote her own memoirs, and the family actually contested what she had written. It didn't fit. And even what was said about the families themselves, how exactly did her family not know anything about Hitler? How did they not know that? They claimed in their memoirs that they didn't know nothing about it, that they only met him once or twice. That's a bunch of horse shit, and
Yeah. I mean, she sent her.
Like one thing that I always try to make clear, like especially when I have Tino or somebody like that on, I always make the clear distinction. Tino's a historian. I am a history lover. There's a difference, right? I love history, but I do not have I don't have the paperwork, right? So, and that's why I say, you always defer to somebody who knows more than what you do. Me, I've read the books. I've watched a million videos. I've counter checked out. I always look at both sides. That's why I get in trouble with my British friends, because they get mad at me because I go, the Blitz wasn't really that bad. Get over it. And they get mad at me because then I go, what about Dresden? And then they go, shut up. And
yes.
Right. So and half of Europe,
half of Europe.
Well, yeah, 3/4. Whoops.
There was like three. There was like 3 towns in all of Germany that wasn't burned to the ground.
No, we needed parking lot space. Just kidding.
Well,
and you Canuckians were involved in it. I don't want to hear it.
So, I always laugh because there's a video out there made by an Australian. I can't think of the channel right now, but he's like, I was watching World War I documentaries about Canada, because we always hear, the modern thing is the Canadian military, Canadian military, right? And he goes, so I was watching World War I. He says, so I found out something. To sum up Canada, we'll sum up Canada like this. During peacetime, they say they're sorry. During wartime, you are the one who are sorry. Yeah.
I was invited to join the Canadian military 10 years ago when Normandy came out. I have until I'm 50.
There you go.
Apparently. I had a
Well,
thought, but
it's, you know, from Canadian military, I always bug a friend of mine who I've got a series on this channel, stories with Mr. CCTV. Mr. CCTV deployed several times with the United States military. He was fueler, and I always bug him because my cousin, who was in the Canadian military, when he came back, his biggest gripe was, how come it takes the Americans so damn long to fill up their damn tanks? And why does it only one guy that can do it? What the fuck? Because we have to fill up our own shit. Like, so yeah, it's just funny. So I always bug him about that. But you know, from my cousin. But it's just crazy because even like I always make the joke, and it's sad because it's true. If you show the average Canadian the red ensign, the Canadian red ensign, they have no fucking clue what that is.
You may want to tell the people here who doesn't either.
Our flag. Before the maple leaf, that was our flag, folks. Got news for you. Which is why I say the biggest stupidity that ever hit Ottawa was the fact that our prime minister had to approve the red ensign flying at the Vimy Ridge Monument, because people were actually, well, shouldn't it be the maple leaf because that's our flag? No, because that wasn't the flag that was on their shoulder, you moron. But anyway, you know, stupid people. But it's been lost to history. Nobody, it's kind of like, if we don't,
you know what? That's the thing that scares me today is about all the information we gather and obtain today, and all the things that has been learned over the past many years. When we are gone, and with the fourth and the fifth incarnation of the education system and lack of information transference, a lot of the things we know will be gone. And it's when you look at the ancient alien theory, and you hear people talk, well, you know, possibly there was a civilized. All right, hold that thought. I have to go.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll put it this way. I mean, the thing I find the funniest is when somebody stands up and goes, we could never do that with all our modern technology, so we don't know how they did it back then.
What?
And like, good example, prime example of that, while Tino's doing what he's got to do, the pyramids.
Yeah.
Does anybody else sit there and go, bullshit, when they go, with all of our modern technology, we couldn't build them that accurate? The fuck?
I hear that stuff all the time, and I mean, right now I'm actually I'm mentoring a friend of mine's son, and he actually told his mom one day, he's like, "Is there anything that you know Uncle Brandon doesn't know how to do?" And I understood what he said. I was like, "Bud, this is how you learn," and I started teaching him, you know, how to do these things. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People think it's impossible, and I was like, I was always taught when I was younger that I could do more with less.
Yes,
that is how I grew up. That's how I mean, anything. Usually, if I wanted, I built it.
Well,
you know, I mean,
when I was growing up, I'll be transparent. My stepdad, because he wasn't my biological, he was my stepdad. Was born in 1928. So I learned real quick that if I wanted to do something, the best way to do it is to fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. My dad ingrained in me, you don't know how to do that right now. Pay attention, watch the people who do, and copy. And I got through a lot of stuff, like even stuff I do now online. Okay, I don't know how to do this. I'll look it up. It's not that hard.
Well,
and people just sit there and go, well, I don't know how to do that, so it's beyond my capability. When I started my YouTube channel, I had no idea how to edit. I'd never edited a damn thing in my life. Now I've gotten semi-good at it. I'm not great at it, but I'm semi-good at it. But you know, it's trial and error. You're going to fuck up.
Right. And this is I'm glad you said that, because exactly, I mean, I just shared this quote earlier today. from one of the guys that I look up to the most. He was like my childhood idol, which is AJ Foyt. You know, when he won his 4th Indianapolis 500, I even got it written down right here in front of me. This is what he said during his interview when he won the Indy 500 the 4th time. He said, "This is what's wrong with the world today. So many people will start beautiful projects, and if things don't work out just right, then they give up." And he said, "Never give up. You can never be a winner if you want to be a quitter." Yeah. When you want to be a quitter, and that, you know, that sticks home with me, because I that's what I try to explain to this kid. There's nothing that you can't do if you don't put your mind to it, and that's the reason why you know, when he said, you know, is there anything that Uncle Brandon doesn't know how to do? That's exactly what I was referring to. I mean, I could pull up this piece of plastic right now, and instead of buying a new truck, I built one. Yeah. I mean, you know,
yeah.
You know,
but the problem is we've gotten too comfortable. We're everything is a millisecond away to the next thing. I mean, take a look at what's popular. TikTok. TikTok is popular. Why is TikTok popular? Because the videos are no longer than 3 fucking minutes.
Because people have the
right?
attention span of
and
a goldfish.
The 3-minute videos do bad. The ones that do better are the 60-second videos. Why?
Yeah.
Because they're quick, they're fast, and they're on flash.
I'm a prime example of that. If you look at my TikToks, anything that's over 3 minutes, there's like a couple, maybe, you know, a couple hundred views maximum. Anything that's like 60 seconds is like 12,000, 14,000 views. I'm like,
absolutely. And
it's not like the Chinese doesn't know this, because their TikTok is not the same as ours.
No.
The Western TikTok is not the same as the Chinese TikTok, because that has a whole, they actually have value to it.
Well, and get this. This is what blows my mind. If you go on there and look at my videos, the rant ones are the ones that get the most. The political ones are the ones that get the most views.
Yep.
Now, if I share, you know, how I restored a fire hydrant, or how, you know, the video on how I'm redoing this, or building this with my bare hands, it'll get almost no views.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's political, holy shit.
You skyrocket. Well, and like the other thing too, and it also depends on which side of the aisle you pick. And that's just the truth. That's just fact. It depends on which side of the aisle you pick. And the other thing too is we're slowly losing the ability to use a phrase that I grew up on. Agree to disagree.
Oh God, yes.
Right? That phrase is being slowly weaned out, so that you can't do that. What do you mean you agree? How can you be friends with this person when they're polar opposite to you? Well, simple. We know where we stand on certain things. I know that I can beat him over the head with what I consider truth, and he's going to look at me and go, "Fuck you." And then he's going to try to beat me over the head, and I'm going to look at him and go, "Fuck you." And we've established this. So we go, agree to disagree, move on, next.
Right. And exactly. Well, and that's, you know, the art of the conversation is completely lost. And, you know, with my pattern of my videos, that's exactly how it is. I mean, if you watch them, you know, if somebody's respectful and wants to have a talk, and we split back and forth, the videos are professional. We're just having a conversation. But I always tell everybody, if you open the door, I'm going to kick that bitch off the hinges. Well, and what I mean by that is, if you attack me, if you decide to go with the name calling, or you're an idiot, or that, you know, and stuff like that, I am going to go out of my way to ruin you. And that's
and my one thing my dad always taught me was, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So to me, if you're raising your voice because you're steadfast in what you believe, right? So tempers get a little hot, okay? But you're sticking to the facts that you know of, right? And you're arguing passionately. That's fine. I'm good with that.
No, it's not, because if you disagree with me, then it's hate speech, and hate speech is violence.
But
and that's the problem.
For me, the crux is this: the second you insult the person you're debating, you lost.
You forgot everything is racist too. You forgot to add that in there.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's sorry. I'm sorry.
Um,
But I think with that we can boil that down to a time from where people were more intelligent, because today, okay, and I think at least certainly us here can agree that a lot of the points taken by extremists these days are outright complete lunacy. I mean, there's no sane person who will define it as anything else, which means some people are clinging to a position that you cannot defend by common sense or law or right or wrong. So you can't argue it because it's lunacy.
yeah.
Even the Nazis were predicated some of these insane policies on law. They had some incredibly tell you why they needed to do some of the things they did, which is scary, but they could defend it. They could argue why they did what they did. Today, you have people pushing agendas that are so outside of common sense, and they can't defend them. So they won't debate. They won't talk to you. And if you have the gall to tell them that what they're saying is outright crazy or wrong, or you don't agree, then hate speech, violence, racism, then they start labeling you because that's all they have.
Exactly.
And that's how you stifle speech.
And that's why that's why we call them buzzwords.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have the classic Marxist, socialist, communist, it's hard for them to explain why they do.
I got to get an injection. I'll be back in a couple of seconds.
Oh, yeah. And it becomes very hard for people to. They can't argue the positions they're taking. I mean, if you want to argue, well, let's just pick one. To argue why 3 or 4 or 5-year-olds should have hormone suppressing drugs because their parents feels they may be a different gender. That's really hard for me in a common sense, wanting to protect safety and the health of a child, knowing, because we know from history, from the castratas, just exactly how damaging to kids this is. So it's very hard to argue that. I mean, and now you're sexualizing children. You use the word sexualizing and children. Now you really have a problem with me because I want to protect this child so they can grow up and figure out what they are themselves. If I have a teenage kid and he grows up to be gay or whatever he wants to be, when he is sexually conscious, then he can make that decision. Right. But you cannot ruin his life at 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
You want to argue that debate. They can't really argue this, but they still have doctors, psychiatrists arguing this, just like the Nazis had lawyers arguing why they needed to get rid of the Jews. This is insanity.
Science, but
yes. And now I'm not sure who we're hating by actually stating the obvious, because I will dare say that 99% of the world's population will agree with this, because, well, you're a level-headed person, you will agree with this. Certainly our enemies, the Russians, the Middle Easterns, the Chinese, with this. Scary enough. But the 1% that doesn't, they yell louder than the 99% because they don't want to get caught up in it. They don't want to be called names.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I told them that, you know, they told me I was it's one of the phobics. There's thousands of them now. But I was transphobic because I didn't think that that biological males should be in the cage fighting with females. And they're like, well, that's transphobic. I'm like, look, I really don't care what you say it is. It's still a biological male. And had to explain to them there is a reason why there's a difference between male and female. And, you know, the bone structure, the strength. Yeah, exactly. There's a reason for it. And, it went down. It went into this whole big, you know, what if type stuff. And I said, listen, I was like, I'm gonna say something right now. I don't care if you are, identify as male, female, or think you're a toaster. I don't care. But to push that as a rationality to the entire populace, is completely and utterly wrong. That's not what it is.
All right.
Oh, all right. So, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy because you get, unfortunately, when you go into the conversations, there are guidelines now where there used to not be guidelines. You had two people with opposite opinions and they could rationally talk it out. Yes, I hate to break this to the modern people, but yes, raising your voice does not mean you're a bigot. Raising your voice means you're passionate about that certain topic. Now, if you're just going with buzzwords and insults, then you have no argument to stand on. Period.
Yep.
And
well, I kept saying that. I told one person that I was supposed to be debating. They started doing that, and I was like, listen, here, I'm going to set a ground rule: no phobics, no isms.
yeah.
And they had nothing to say after that. They could not say anything else.
You go, okay, I'm going to say this right now, and you list off the buzzwords, and you go, okay, they've been said. Now they're garbage. Next, right? And here's the worst thing you can say during a debate. Why?
Right.
They'll say something, and you go, why? And then you just wait for the silence, because there's no A, B, C, D, E, F. It's just A. And if you go any deeper than A, they're screwed. Because I haven't thought that far ahead. And that's in all branches, from politics. And the other thing that a lot of people that I point out to my son is, I says, take a look around. I says, here's the thing. What is the easiest way to defeat an opponent? He plays football a lot, right? So what's the easiest way to win? Divide the team, right? You pull a center off to the right and you go around. He goes, yeah. I says, so what do you think they're doing to us? Divide, conquer, keeps them in power. We haven't learned this in many, many years and many, many wars. It's that simple. Look around. Everybody's divided. And unfortunately, if you divide things too far, they can't stand. What's the easiest way to make sure that nothing gets passed? Make sure that both sides of the argument that should be one side of an argument are fighting each other. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
And we do that with everything. Although, here's an interesting thought, because you guys brought up Kennedy earlier, so we're going to go rewind for a second, because I had an interesting thought, because we did just a chat with us non-informed idiots, and we just went around the table, and I posed a simple question. If Kennedy doesn't get assassinated, right? Kennedy fills out his term. Is he remembered in the same light?
Well, it depends if he dismantles the CIA and revamps the justice system through his brother and becomes the great reformer. Maybe Johnson's laws and the regulations passed by the Democrats thereafter will not destroy the African-American family in America. Have everybody be working hard and earn the money. I don't know.
Would he have survived the Bay of Pigs?
Yeah.
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't.
He already did, practically.
I think that would have been his downfall. If he doesn't get assassinated, that's going to be used politically against him.
I mean, he's never going to be remembered in the same. You're never going to be the same light as if you were assassinated. That's just really good PR. But
yeah,
I mean, that's hard. It's hard to beat.
Yeah. But it is an interesting thing to think about. Would we look back on that presidency with the same light as we do now?
I believe so.
I mean, certainly he would have been up there if he did actually follow through and was who he seemed to be. Yeah, I mean, I think he could have done things. I would like to. I would like to think so, but it is sad to say that the Democrat Party did die that day, but so did democracy. And we did, and I think we have proved to the point today that we are sadly a banana republic at this point. But what we trying to say before everybody, I run in and out a bit. I'm working, so I'm keeping an eye on a couple of people. Which I'm going to go do again now. All right, you carry on for a minute, and I will give you my couple of points that I'm saving up now in the back of my ginormous small brain. Stand by.
As you were carry on.
But yeah, so but that question always, those questions always, I find so interesting. The what ifs. And I know from a historian point of view, you don't want to go down the what ifs because there's so many angles. But it's an interesting way to look at it, because you have to pull yourself out of that situation and go, well, would it have, it's the same thing as the old time honored, if Pearl Harbor doesn't happen, what happens? If and so on and so on and so on with World War II. You can pick different spots and go, well, what happens if this didn't happen, or this happened differently? What happens if he never goes east? Yeah, stuff like that, but it's an interesting brain exercise for me. I always find it's a really interesting brain exercise. It doesn't change anything, and you can't really be wrong and you can't really be right. But I think it's a great brain exercise to do once in a while. Just sit there and go, okay, let's change the fork in the road. And would this have happened? Or would this still have played out the way it played out? And a lot of people don't do that, because, and the other thing that I think, to your point earlier about not being able to bring things into schools and stuff, the one thing that I have found as a layman in the history world, that I think is disturbing is, and maybe you can tell me I'm wrong and relieve my stress and anxiety about it, but what I have found really, really concerning is this push to discredit anybody that was there, boots on the ground. Wrong, right? So you'll get this gentleman who went through the Pacific War from start to finish, and he's recounting his story, and some other idiot who read books comes up and says you're wrong because you're missing the bigger picture. Well, he didn't care about the bigger picture. He cared about the guns in front of him, and we should give that some credence, and we don't. We're being trained not to, in my opinion. I could be wrong with that one, but in my opinion, that is the curve right now. Is the people that were there are not a reliable source. Trust us.
Exactly. Trust me, bro. Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Right.
Well, that's one of the things. But one of the smartest things I've ever came up with and told people was, if you focus on the problem, you can't see the solution.
Yeah.
And I had to have one of them. I had to explain to him why I meant what I meant by that. And I was like, listen, I was like, you're looking at these one websites, right? They're only by your, that are in line with your thinking, your side, yep. Correct? They're like, yes. I was like, so you're not focusing, you're focusing on the problem, but you're not seeing the solution.
Yeah.
Like when I do research on history or anything else like that, I'm looking at things from multiple angles, not from just hey, our side won. The history is written by the victors. That's not true. You got to look at it all, and it almost short circuits them. They don't understand what you're trying to tell them.
Yeah, and the other thing too, if you look at it like this, we have this weird fascination lately of, we don't need people to lie about history, because we just decide what we're going to go with, and that's that. And like I said, the biggest concern for me, and Tino, you can maybe tell me that I'm overreacting, but my major pet peeve right now, when you look at history, is this push that people that were there aren't a reliable source. They're unreliable because they don't know the whole picture. We do because we read the books, so trust us. And the people that were there don't know what they're talking about. So don't believe them, believe us. Because we have this piece of paper on our wall, and we know more than the people that were there, which makes no damn sense.
I mean, it's very true that first of all, memory degenerates, and also people have a personal agenda in many ways.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, it does. It's hard. People who write down diaries while things are actually happening around them, if these can be somewhat backed up by contemporary reports and other things, because a lot of people write, I mean, most diaries from the time, especially from lower level people who don't expect this to be published or needing them in a court later, will be fairly honest. If you have the post-event diary or memoirs, memoirs are scary. They're sketchy. I mean, like you talk about Speer. Speer didn't barely even wrote half of these himself. He had writers working on these with him.
Well, yeah. But I mean, like, but I think, in my opinion, which counts for about a shekel, in the grand scheme of things, I think it shouldn't be the end all, the beginning and end all, but I think they should be their what they're saying should be part of the equation.
I think it should, but and then I would look at it again as representations of you write a book and then it's republished. Did somebody rewrite it or edit it since it was republished? To certain fact, that's why I like the old first edition of books, because you get at least the first shot at it, and then the second and the third revision. Sometimes they get better because more information is found. And sometimes things will get deleted and missing. And that's the thing about the internet. You can delete anything by the press of the button. Books are harder. And you see certain books will be very hard to find because, people don't like what's in them. So and it's not that long ago the books were being burned, which is really scary. Yeah. But when it comes to one thing, which is just regressing back to what we were talking about before, with the whole agenda and that we're seeing that doesn't make any sense, is that you have this, we'll take the transgender movement, we have these kids, sexuality, you have things that should be not taking anything away from people who are transgender, not taking anything from gay or straight people, or whatever they are, anything there, but they are still a micro minority of most cultures and societies and countries.
But you would think they're the majority.
Take up 90% of the media platform. It is they take up way too much space in our society and in our debates. It's not all about them. It shouldn't be all about them. This should be a small conversation somewhere. It should, if it needs to exist, it needs to exist. But it shouldn't be the end all be all. It should not be something that's you ask a presidential candidate for what do you think about children? I mean,
who cares?
And that's the problem. But what I think it is, I think it is a distraction. I think it's a deliberate distraction.
Absolutely.
By all the nonsense they're doing, because I don't even think most of the people pushing this believes in it.
No,
they're just using it to not rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
Everything is a rope-a-dope. You make noise here, stuff happens over here, and that's what they're doing.
Over here. Well, this hand is actually doing all of the work.
It's the same. Whether there's battle or politics or culture or society, the ones that yell the loudest are not the ones you need to pay attention to, because things that are really being done is happening while you're not looking in the dark, and that's why they'll be able to slide all these globalists, all these deals, all the like the FASB 56 and all these little rules and regulations and the WHO signatures giving them way too much power. All this is happening quiet. This is what we need to have a very loud debate about. Does the World Health Organization have the right to take over the control of your government and country? I want a very loud conversation about that. But no. We need to talk about men's swimming teams, because that's much more important globally. Horseshit.
Exactly. And why in the hell do we have any, any of our leaders, including Trudeau and the child sniffing dementia daddy in our office, going to the World Economic Forum?
You know what?
Why the fuck
Yes.
are they there? I'm sorry to say it that way, but
and what were they doing while there, except doing their digital passports and their? But it's all about control.
Here's the thing that is scary, and I think it's a distraction that people just don't understand. Is they'll go, okay, well, we're going to get everybody scared about digital currency. Everybody's going to be scared about digital currency. What they don't realize is everything that you're scared that they can do with digital currency, they can do now. Because 90% of us have our money in banks. That's one government phone call, and you can't access your bank. Period. Whether it's digital or not. The minute you put it into a financial institution, it is accessible.
Yeah, but
whether
that's
you like it or not, it's accessible. Anybody who's ever owed money to the IRS or the Canadian Revenue Agency will tell you straight up, money will go bye-bye real quick.
Well, just let me, that's why I, precious metals.
Yeah. But again, it's crazy because people are
brass,
focused on
lead,
one thing.
gold.
Yeah, people are focused on one thing, but it can already be done. The scariest things a politician will ever say, one of them is, don't worry, yes, this gives me a lot of power, but I will never use it.
we're back to the question. Ask yourselves, if you're on the left or the right, do you trust your government? Do you trust your media? Do you trust people who have ultimate power to do what's best for you?
Well, two things with that. Absolute power corrupts abso-fucking-lutely.
Yep.
And the most frightening sentence ever spoken is, "We're here from the government and we're here to help."
Yeah.
I'm from the government and we're here to help. Absolutely no, they're not.
You mean like when the algorithm is designed to help you?
Help. Once it stops benefiting them, they're not there to help anymore.
No. That's the algorithm is here to help you, don't you know? It will make your life better. Stop thinking. Plug into the hive, get your daily dose.
It helps guys like you and I really well, doesn't it?
People have a brain fart up here in Canada. You go, well, you do realize that the income tax was designed to pay for World War I. I think that war has been over for a while.
Are you sure?
I'm just spitballing here, but I think that war's been over for a bit.
Yes, I mean every tax to and I'm just saying. Well, when I moved out of Europe, where taxes are enormous, and I love how they say, "Oh, you got social welfare, it's free. You get free schools, you get free hospitals, you got free this, that, and the other." Yes, and most of it sucks. And if you take a country like Denmark, where Oprah and Obama went to say about how wonderful it is to pay between 50 and 70% income tax, it's awesome because we get free. This is the same place where 52% of Danes now have private health care because the public health care is terrible. Schools probably are a little bit better, but you pay almost everything you earn.
Okay.
And so the services getting by the government are not getting any bigger, any better. But the Europeans are at least somewhat better at, we'll take all your taxes and we'll control you digitally and digital passports and all these stuff. But they're fairly good at delivering. The federal government of this country, being America, have you been to the DMV lately?
The VA. Well,
or the VA or anything else run by the government.
As a Canadian, right? Yay. You know
about this. You know this better than anybody.
Yeah. Is our healthcare system perfect? Fuck no. I'm. But I'll tell you this. I had. You can also do the devil's advocate and go, well, I had 4 kids, and when I left the hospital, I had a bill of $0.
Yeah.
I can also say that I had a nurse just come into my house, give me an injection, and I pay $0.
True. How much do you pay in taxes?
Right now, not a lot because I'm on disability. But when I worked, dear God, let's not go there.
Right.
But
so
again,
the question is, no, so the question is that I was being asked by them. So, well, is it better to go to America where you pay proportionally, some states less tax than others, and you're responsible for your own health insurance where you then pay for that, or not? And now I'm saying California. Well, you're close to 50% tax in California. You take state and federal, and you make just a little bit of money. So I'm paying a crap ton of tax. The roads suck. There's homeless everywhere. Crime is running rampant. Waiting lists everywhere. Is it worth it? Would I rather just not pay the same taxes and be responsible for my own insurances? Yeah, probably.
Well, yeah, and I agree with that. Like I said, being a victim of the VA myself. But here's the thing. I said this to somebody else when they were talking about when Obamacare came in and stuff like that. So this is going to be the death of our healthcare system, and they couldn't understand. Like, no, everybody's going to be able to go and and do this and do that. I'm like, no, it's not true at all. It's actually the exact opposite.
Yeah, but they got the website up and running in a short 3 years.
Yeah. And well, if you like your doctor, doctor takes your insurance because you're on the free stuff. It's substandard healthcare. It's basically like the trial version of the Veterans Affairs Office. I told them, said back then, I was like, listen, there's nothing wrong with the healthcare system. They're like, yes, it is. No, it's too expensive. I'm like, it's going to get worse. But here's the thing. The problem with the healthcare system is not the healthcare system itself. It's the insurance. And the reason why the insurance is so high is because all these doctors have to get, $100,000, $200,000 coverage to even practice medicine because of the sue happy nut jobs. The Band-Aid pulled some hair off. So I'm going to sue you for $3 million because I got a bald spot on my arm. That's how ridiculous that these lawsuits were.
You mean $700 aspirin? And not a good idea?
Yeah. Well, actually, I will say this: if I had to pay for my 300 tablets of Tylenol 3, it's only $24.59 here. But and I remember having to pay for all that garbage. But at the same time, I think there's benefits to both systems. I really do.
There are.
Because I don't think going all the way one way or all the way the other way is ever good.
I will actually agree with you to some degree.
Yeah.
Because it's like an argument, right? If you have somebody who's dead fast in one spot, another person dead fast in another spot, there's no movement. There's no ability to meet in the middle. There has to be a middle ground. And I think that's the same thing with everything. You could apply that logic to everything around you. There has to be a middle ground. If there's no middle ground, if you remove the middle ground, you're fact.
I mean, as long as we agree that everybody who disagrees with me is a fascist, they need to be shot. However,
I think we should bring back the Iron Maiden and boiling people in oil, but
only some of them. What the thing is, and now obviously, for those of you who know me, I'm obviously.
Here's what we do. Perfect solution. Remove caution hot from coffee cups. Remove all this bubble wrap and shit, and we just let natural selection fix everything.
Well, I'll tell you what. I agree with that. One thing. Yeah, absolutely. We need to get rid of the frivolous lawsuits. And one thing that is really interesting that Obama and Oprah, how could I forget her, did not dare mention when they was in Denmark that there's a clause to Danish law that says that any lawsuit brought before the court has to constitute common sense. You implement that, we should theoretically, if we had any right-thinking judge, not in political right, but any right-in-the-head thinking judges, should be able to kick out half of the lawsuit. Probably the lawyer's not going to like this, just like politicians don't like the fact that we want them to vote on term limits. The people who are actually fixing their own ship, we need to get them to sink half of their ships, which is why we're not going anywhere, because we're a country that's now run by big business, big pharma, whoever, and and politics is big business. It's kind of hard to see where one's ass begins and where the face begins of the other.
Yeah.
But I do think if we go back to the very core foundation of a civilized society, it doesn't have that many, there's not that many things it needs to do. It needs to keep the borders and the citizens safe and protected. That's, even in feudal times, no one's going to fight for the feudal lord unless he keeps them safe and fed and maybe educated. And maybe healthcare should be under that as well. So generate a country that you have law enforcement and law enforcement to keep people safe inside, military to keep the borders safe and protect the country. There should be, in this day and age, room for proper healthcare or healthcare options, proper education, and make sure that the food supply is safe and consistent. That's really all we really need to do. We could have private initiatives to fix the roads, because Lord knows where I live, the government's not doing it anyway. We could have private initiatives and make that the solution to many problems. There's a need. You want windmills everywhere, electric cars. Well, let this market figure it out on its own. But of course, the whole global warming thing, whether you believe that or not. But I don't think there's that many things a government needs to do. And what we really need to explain to politicians, whether it be in the EU, or Canada, or America, is that they work for us. We don't work for them. And we are not the milking cows for their existence, which seems to be something that is completely lost on most politicians. This is not about them. This is about us.
And not only on that, more to that on that point is not only do we have to explain to the politicians, but as I was saying while you were away there, the biggest thing we need to do is wake up and realize the scam. We're all so divided and fighting amongst each other. The politicians don't have to worry about shite.
No. More in common with each other than we have with them.
Yeah,
no matter what side they're on.
I put it to one of my friends, because we were having a heated conversation back when they were doing a women's rights movement in the union, and I says, here's the thing. Do you know why you'll never get anything done? And they go, why? I said, because it's only you doing it. And they go, what are you talking about? I says, you want to see them shit? You have men and women unite and march on that hill. Yeah.
I thought you were just going kinky there for a second.
No. But if you want to see them go, oh, fuck, is you have you men that divide, and you stop trying to argue amongst each other, and you have both parties going to going up and going, hey, you know what? This is bullshit. Then you have a problem, because they can't divide you.
But that's what they have effectively done, and you can say that the mass media is the largest contributor to having divided us and Europeans from a sense of each other and a sense of self and self a country and a self a common sense and independence. The mass media, by their spurious reporting for the past, especially the past 2-3 years, by deliberately censoring anything that's not a public narrative, and first of all, earned them a complete lack of trust, but it's also divided us. And they've been doing that for decades now, where you have left and right, Republicans and Democrats at each other's throats over issues that are non-issues. Yeah. People go and kill each other for, is abortion 4 months, or is it 9 months plus 1? Or why don't you sit and talk about it? No, we can't talk about it. They are wrong. We are right. We can't talk. We can't coexist with them. Nope. This is how you get civil war and wars started, by convincing people that they have less in common with each other, and you are there to save them.
Yes.
And that, I don't understand what happened to journalism. It's dead. You see journalists in Mexico that get murdered by the cartels daily, but they still risk talking about what's happening to their country despite their danger. We don't have any journalistic integrity or bravery in Western countries anymore at all. They're all too scared to lose their jobs. And when we have a journalist that's actually, I guess he was picked up by an ABC reporter that was picked up by the FBI, never seen from it, never seen again.
Yeah.
Now we have actual reporters who he found a story on the Afghanistan withdrawal, and he's gone. He's missing. Where is all his journalistic colleagues asking out loud to Congress and politicians, where is our friend? No one, not a word. They are all moral cowards. And it is disgusting that nobody wants to speak up for people who are missing or abused or mistreated by what is becoming a dictatorial government. And that's something that should scare both, because the lever of power is the same depending on who's in power. Except one side seems to wish to abuse it more than the other. But what are they going to do when the other side comes in? Then they could theoretically do the same thing. This should be something nobody wants, that everybody should agree on.
I literally got yelled at because of one of the Machine Radio Show T-shirts. Because it literally said "fuck the mainstream media" right on the front of it, and they're like, "Well, that's not very press-like. It's like it's a good thing that we're not your average media." And the guy's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "We actually appreciate free speech, which is up to and including foul language. If you can't handle it, then you're in the wrong place." And he's like, "Well, one of the journalists that was actually was actually one of the guys from CNN." And he's like, "Well, I don't agree with that at all." It's like, "Of course not. You're in like the worst of the worst already." And no, we're not. I was like, "Okay, do you remember the Zimmerman trial?" And he just stared at me. I was like, "Yeah, you guys doctored all the videos, called him a white Hispanic, which I've never heard of before. You called him a white Hispanic, and then you edited the video to make it sound like he was saying that there's a crazy black man, running through the neighborhood, and that wasn't true." I was like, "You guys have no credibility. You do realize that, right? Because you've edited everything. You edited the stories about the Middle East. You edited that story. You edited, started naming all this stuff off." And he's just staring at me. He was like, "That's why it says this." Because
Donald Trump is not orange.
Yeah.
I mean, if you add color, like that Biden 1984 speech he did, they add the colors, because they could sit there in the media room and go like, "This doesn't look good," and they try to brighten up the colors. Everything is faked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
I've always, even with history, I mean, you look at the brush that's painted now, and you just go, "Well, wait a second, why are we acting holier than thou art?" I mean, one thing I used to get in trouble for pointing out, you go back to the mid-20s and the euthanasia program that was in Germany. There was American doctors that idolized the way Germany was doing it.
Yes.
Of course.
And now, if you read the documents, oh no, they shunned that stuff. That was
started here before Germany. Germany took a page out of euthanasia, the programs we had here for insanes and alcoholics.
Yeah, and it originated in what state?
I'm not 100% sure.
Above or below the Mason-Dixon line? Oh, we did it. Oh. Well, we have so many initiatives out here; it's hard to keep track.
It's hard to keep track.
But it's the other thing. The other words that have erased, like I said, the main words that I always find amazing that are erased from the human language now is agree to disagree. And somebody said it in chat here. Jeff says it in chat. The other words, I don't know. For some reason, that's a bad thing to say now. For anybody to go, I don't know. Right? If you ask somebody a question and they have any, like a politician or anybody in power, anybody of any power, even your boss at work, how do I do this? He's got to make some shit up, because if he can't say I don't know, or somehow that reflects bad on him.
Right. Yeah. Well, you if you want to see people's heads melt with what we just said just a second ago, if you want to see minds just explode, tell them that the Americans and the British were complicit in the Holocaust.
Most countries really were, but certainly, we did our share.
You should see how we were not a part of those atrocities. I'm like, yes, we were. They shipped a bunch of them to us.
Yep.
And we turned around and said, "Nope, go right back." And then I believe it was less than 2% of all that went back were all killed.
Yeah, there were kids too.
Yeah.
5 different seaports on the East Coast, a ship full of 1,000 Jews were not allowed to dock in America.
Well, yeah, because immigration is bad, don't you know?
It was.
Yeah, I
it
mean,
wasn't bad. It was.
It comes back, and it's used today. It's still used today. And
hang on for a second, gentlemen.
yep. But it's funny because what we consider today to be, fact, if you dig a little, you'll find out a whole bunch of really interesting information that you go, wait a damn second, that's not what I was told. But the problem is they know and they rely on the fact that we as a civilization are too effing lazy to do it. The majority are too lazy.
Yeah.
They're not going to look any deeper than the surface.
Intellectual curiosity is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well,
so the question is, have people learned? Are they going to start looking themselves for the truth? And that's the problem. We have so many people with 3 kids, 3 jobs. They don't have time to go in depth to investigate every claim made by a politician or a journalist. Right. They're at some point in time going to have to resolve themselves to the last thing they heard, or the pundit they sort of believe and say, all right, I like this guy, I like Mark Levin, whatever Mark Levin says is what I believe in, because it's easier instead of trying to figure it out on their own.
Well,
and that's
like you said, they don't want to scratch the surface. So I'm gonna say this: beauty is skin deep, but ugly is to the bone. And you think about that. Think about that. And think about going down the rabbit hole and finding the other information of what you're going to find. It's not always going to be,
and it takes time.
And the other thing
bunnies and happy rays of sunshine and unicorn piss is going to be ugly.
The other thing too, what I used to do when I was back in high school, one of my favorite things to do was to find a conspiracy theory, and then look at everything within that conspiracy theory, and then even if it's the craziest, loopiest thing in the world, go down that rabbit hole. You'll always find a grain or two.
Yeah.
My favorite anymore is making fun of QAnon. If any
conspiracy theory lasts for any length of time, there has to be a grain or two.
I mean, there's usually nothing comes from nothing. There's things start for a reason.
Right.
Somebody told me that is the Titanic. It was really the Olympic. What everybody forgets is the Olympic was crossing the ocean at the freaking time.
I mean, how often don't we see documentaries where you see whatever's... I see that in documentaries all the time, and sometimes you sort of have to do it yourself because you're trying to talk about an event of which there are no photos or videos or images. So you take events that are photos of things that are almost identical to what that would have been to give people something at. But then you have editors who know nothing about history, and all of a sudden you see mixes of footage that are so far out left field that you go, no, this is not even what you have no idea what you're doing.
The deep fakes are getting good, aren't they?
Well,
they are.
Never mind deep fakes. You stick with the Titanic. A lot of the footage that are shown in Titanic documentaries are the freaking Olympic.
Yeah, because they don't have enough footage of Titanic.
Yeah, they didn't have enough footage. Yeah.
And and to some degree, I'm sort of okay with that because it to give people an idea what things look like.
People an idea.
You have to give them some idea. There are no photos of Hitler at his headquarters in France in June of June 16th. There's no photos. None were taken. But I have to put in a picture of Hitler with his field marshals and generals to give them, this is the guy and this is what the meeting would have looked like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fine, get it. But it does make it very easy when it becomes more and more significant. And what bothers me is when you have believe it or not, there's a lot of photos of the Holocaust that are faked. Some of them are very poorly faked. And then you ask yourself the question, are these staged photos taking screenshots from films that you're using in order to depict this specific event? Or have they been faked because for whatever reason? And an event that may not have happened, or a specific event. Not saying, don't get me wrong, not saying the Holocaust didn't happen, but if they're talking about a specific event, they have a specific photo, that is a fake. That, and we're talking about something that's really serious, about life and death. That I don't think you cannot use a fake photo to depict a maybe event.
Yeah,
well, that's what it gets here. Then you have to make a recreation, or other but use outright. And I see museums. I have been in Holocaust museums where I've seen photos that I knew were doctored because it had come out. And you want to call up to the curators that, listen, this photo is a very well-known fake. Not that the event it depicts just didn't happen, but that photo is a fake, and that takes away from your presentation.
Yeah, look at the movie The Photographer.
But the other scary part and of what you're talking about is there are people that will find that one inconsistent, that one fake, the one inconsistency, the one thing. And if they find that, that means that the whole event was BS.
That's the problem. Yeah, that is the problem. That's why you cannot have fakes in these events, because you cannot have that person go say, hey, they use fake photos. There are none. It didn't happen. You can't have that happen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because, and the other thing too is, like, for instance, with my videos here on History with R&R, I try to really overstate the fact I am not a historian. I do not know everything. I could be wrong.
Historians don't know everything. They question.
Right? I was just going to go say who's not anything.
But to give, like, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, I'm a historian. I would never say that, because
we're like history scientists, okay? Because scientists are stuck in the why phase. So that's pretty much what we are.
I mean, the more doctorates the person gets, the more he knows about a smaller topic. Yeah, it's like a pin. The more doctorates you get, you know everything about a very small part of history. And generally, some of the professors I've met knows very little about the surrounding events to their little pin.
Yeah.
Well, we've said this before. You and I have talked about this before on another live. What do I always say? You don't, they always see the effect. They don't see the cause.
Yeah.
And
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, that's where we come in. Is we see the effect and we're like, okay, what caused this? Yeah. They don't want to know that. They just want to know, well, this is what it is, and then they run with it. That's
it's the classic statement of the medieval archaeologist. We haven't found it, so it didn't exist. We found it before, we found it after, but we haven't found it for the period we're talking about, so we can't say we didn't exist just because you haven't found it.
Or like I said before. These people
or the Nazi gold train.
Look into a camera and go, the pyramids, we could never make them nowadays. And then you sit there and go, are you on crack? We have cranes that can lift like these big ocean liners out of the water.
But yes, but with the labor laws we have today, we could never do it. We could build the Golden Gate Bridge today.
Okay. Well,
each one of those would have to have 2,000 employees there on site, but only 3 of them are actually working.
Well, yeah,
that's the American
way.
My
union rep.
Exactly.
Somebody's got to lean on a shovel. I mean, come on, jeez, it's union regulation. Give me a break.
Exactly.
But,
watch out for dude. Could you imagine if OSHA was around back then?
Never mind. Could you imagine if half the institutions were around back then? And the other thing that I always that is my pet peeve when I'm watching a documentary, doesn't matter what it is, anything to do with history. My biggest pet peeve is when these people go into a historic event and judge it with a modern look.
Oh God, yes. Oh yes.
What the hell?
I deal with that every year.
Yeah.
It drives me up a wall. Because you can't look at something in the 1600s and judge it by 2022.
No, but they do it constantly.
You can't look at something in 1500s and judge it by 1600s standards. You can't.
Yes. You can't do World War II with today's eyes.
Yeah, which thinking about ridiculous. That, I'm going to have to hold you to that. You're going to have to come here next year for World War II days.
Oh, yeah. Outstanding. No, what I want to do is I want to do a proposal to build a second Panama Canal. And then I want to see the Human Resources Department, when I put in my proposal, that I'm only expecting an attrition rate of about 5% loss. And they'll say, what, and people are quitting? No, deaths, of course.
Well, I mean, could you imagine? Okay.
I only expect 5% of the workforce to die. That's fairly cheap, bro.
Tino, never mind the Panama Canal. Let's build a railroad from coast to coast again.
We can't build one in California from one city to the other. No.
I knew that was coming.
Right? Right?
I mean,
okay. So
there's living in the way. I mean, that can't be done.
Well, how do you go from?
We're going to lay a whole new set of track through the Rockies, and you know, we're going to give these guys some dynamite and tell them to go run into that hole. Okay.
I'm not running into the hole, but I'm definitely going to be there.
One out of 3 to come back. Okay.
But is anybody going to check the mountain for the endangered Peruvian fruit fly? Because, you know.
Yeah, well, of course, you know.
Yeah, endangered dirt was my favorite one. You could.
I mean, the smelt needs water. People in Los Angeles don't.
Cryptogenic soil. They couldn't dig a pipeline in the desert because of cryptogenic soil, because it takes millions of years or thousands of years to repair if you step in it. Endangered fucking dirt. Seriously.
Yep.
And you know, you're right about California, because I'm telling you what, when I was there, which you were too far away, we couldn't have met up. It was hours and hours away.
Yeah.
But I was up there in Fresno and stuff like that, and to see the signs and everything else like that, my jaw dropped. I was like, they're right. Northern California does not give a shit about their governor. No. They hate him, and there were so many signs about the aquifer, you know, about the water and everything else like that. Stop diverting our water, because he's diverting the water to help salmon. You know, and that wasn't going to do any good for the people. They're running out of water in the farms and stuff.
Yeah. Well, you want to. I've blown people's minds by just telling them that you do realize that some of the power for the United States comes from here, right? And they're like, no, we make our own. No. I've been in the building where the switch is. There is one here in Winnipeg. You know, where we just accidentally flip a switch and the American power grid has a problem. But
I mean, I think we have 134,000 households in the greater Los Angeles area that doesn't have water because the smelt needs it, which is a fish nobody eats or wants. But I mean, who cares about people?
Yeah.
Look at global warming. We don't want to have electricity. We don't want to have power. We don't have gasoline or oil. We don't feel for this stuff because in 300 years the water level is going to rise by an inch. So we have every grandma freeze to death this year. At what point it's.
Well, you're right, and how does California, and this just recently happened, how does California go from supposedly having billions of dollars of surplus down to negative 84 billion? I'm like,
I thought about that when I heard
it over there.
I heard about that too. Here's gruesome Newsom is running around talking about the money we have. Oh, we have so much surplus. I'm such a great governor. Like billions of dollars in minus from one end to the where do they go?
No shit.
I thought about that too.
Oh,
I'll also tell you, it was in the pension funds and the Medicare pension funds.
Well, remember, in California, you can't use in San Francisco, you can't use a vape pen, but you can shit in the streets. I mean, they're going to bring back the black flag. I'm telling you.
Plastic straws. That's what's going to get you.
Yeah, paper straws wrapped in plastic. Who the fuck thought
that? No. My personal favorite. My personal favorite. You move to paper straws, plastic cup.
Yeah, no, but if you go, I was actually there. I brought one back with me. It's not here. It's at my home. I showed it to my wife. She's like, "Are you kidding me?" Because they said they went to paper straws. Paper straws are crap. They just turn to mush.
Yeah.
But paper straws. But I was like, "Hey, honey, look at this." She's like, "Well," I handed her one of her straws, which is a plastic straw. She goes, "Yeah, it's plastic straw." I said, "Here's a California straw." She's like, "That's made of paper. It's terrible." I was like, "Exactly, but look at this." And I had a second one, and it was still wrapped in its wrapper. The wrapper was plastic. Like,
yeah.
Who thought this stupid shit?
Well, actually, the plastic straw thing was written up by I think it was an 11-year-old in a school report some 10 years ago about how damaging plastic straws was to the environment, and he sort of made it up because he couldn't get the actual data from the manufacturers, and that report became the basis of the law. It was complete made. It was horseshit. It was complete made up. And you can't. I mean, you can't make this up, but unfortunately, in California, you don't have to.
Well, just remember though, anything that California does, Illinois is sure to parrot. Illinois is like the landlocked version of the California coastline.
I'm sorry.
I know I've lived here my whole life, and it's exactly the same. I always call it Illifornia.
Yeah.
And
I mean, all the worst ideas for European governance and big government and taxes and over-regulation, they found those in California, and California is going to horse manure them to the rest of the country unless people wise up.
Well, Illinois is the proverbial redneck. They're like, hold my beer. We're gonna fuck it up even worse.
But here's your thing. We're now looking at a generation that is growing up wanting things for free and willing to give up personal freedoms and sacrifice to sit at home, work from home, play games at home, and to whatever the universal pay, whatever. We're not looking at a generation that's been brought up to be innovators and take charge and build business, work hard, become millionaires. That's not a dream for them anymore. Just existing without having to do a damn thing, getting funds from the government. That seems to be the goal. And that is sad because I don't want to pay for those people.
No.
I mean, that's where we're going. And that's why they can get away with these nonsense things, because you have bred some sort of laziness and entitlement into a generation who doesn't want more than what they can be given. And what they give up for what they get for free is a whole lot of freedoms that the next generation after them will not even know what was.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Well,
I mean, I just say when we're done, when the three of us are dead and gone, anybody after that, our generation will remember freedom, working hard, reward, money, potential of having things, owning things, creating stuff. The generation after here will, on average, not. They won't understand that. They won't know. There'll be 100 years of darkness coming before enough people want to be free.
I look at it like this. The people in power, whoever they may be, because it ain't the ones we elect, the people in power, they're playing chess, and they're making sure that everybody else is playing checkers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think we're the closest to a feudal world that we've ever been. The only hope I see is that human beings want to be free. We want to have freedom of movement. We want to not be restricted. We want to be able to travel or live the way we want to, or where we want to, or how we want to. And the more of these restrictions that's going to be forced down over people around the world, especially the Western world only, because the third world, they're allowed to be forcibly immigrated into the Western countries to completely and utterly dilute their culture and history and foods and traditions. That's fine. These are not restrictions imposed in the same degree, in the same way on third world nations. It is only the Western civilization that is forced to be destroyed and have our freedoms destroyed. And I'm just the only hope we have really is that there's enough people that wakes up and go, I don't want this. And it's scary if you have kids and you have to go out and demonstrate for your freedom, or as a parent, if you have 2-3 kids and now you have to go single mom out and demonstrate and fight the school board because you don't want your children to be emasculated or destroyed mentally by going to the institutions. It's a fight. And I hope we will then pull them out of schools, have the parents unite, teach your children at home, do the same thing in the workplace. I'm not going to hire, just like they won't hire people who are, oh, you voted for Trump, I'm not hiring you. You voted for this, I'm not hiring you. Well, I guess we have to fight this battle the same way those who seek to destroy us is fighting their battle. It's the only thing we can do. We cannot be the nice people, the sensible people. We have to, I'm not saying we need to go out and riot in the streets and do all this nonsense, but we have to do what they've been doing to us for decades. We have to take care of our own little society. Every little corner of the world a better place. You take care of your neighbor. You take care of your shop. You patronize the small business. You have to make the changes yourself, and we all have to unite about that. And if you don't like the schools, start your own classes. 10 parents, you have 10 kids every day, you have next one, the next one, the next one, and actually raise your children. You can't leave it to the television. You can't leave it to video games or Hollywood to raise your children. And you certainly can't trust the government to do it. We have to be the changes we want, and we have to stick to the values we believe in. And then we have to surround ourselves with people who believe in those same freedoms. And it's a sad thing that when you say freedom, it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, how in the hell did free speech ever be? Oh, free speech? Well, that's fascist. That's one of the most insane things I've ever heard anybody honestly say.
The Pravda disagrees, but
yes.
You know, my personal favorite is, you know, like with my kids. Well, my two older ones, my two younger ones, I didn't have a lot of input on, but my two older ones, you know, my daughter, I've gone up to the school board and yelled and screamed at them, forced them to keep her back a year. I explained it to her why, and they did. Then she went back to her mother, and they went and undid everything I did, and it pissed me off. But anyway, you know, but you the best chance you got is you, like my son. I tell him every day, the best thing I can teach you is ask why. In everything you do, ask why.
Yes.
Ask
and the
why.
best answer you always get is because I say so. And
well, that's usually
said by usually said by somebody with no authority whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing too, like you have to look at it like this. We have to start mending the fences. Stop this BS of, because reality is, when you look at any group, they don't want to fix the issue. They want to complain about the issue and make sure that they get whatever they can for that issue.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to mend the issue, because that would mean that they don't have anything to complain about. And that's a problem.
Oh, I don't think we're going to run out of things to complain about for a while.
Oh, no.
But it's interesting. You know what we all sound like? We sound like liberals from the 60s or 70s. We want freedom. We don't trust the man. Or, I mean, am I right?
Or we
want government in my face. And now the liberals today, I don't know what they understood, that they actually changed the meaning of who they are.
But and the other thing too is we're so scared to do anything that might, you know, ruffle a feather or two. I don't mind being wrong. Hell, there are things that I do that I am completely wrong in doing, but I'm going to do them anyway. Right?
Not me. I don't have that fear. I'm just a complete arsehole. That's
I take great pride in the fact that I earned the title asshole, and I've been waiting to be promoted to prick for years, and it's annoying that it's taking this long.
But we also have to be realistic, because you cannot just blindly go fight the power wherever you happen to be. You can't fight, because you're probably going to lose. And I'll use an example. Everybody, I would say, well, if you are as unhappy as I think a lot of people are here and in Europe, take to the streets and demonstrate and protest, and let whoever's in charge know this does not work. Write your congressman, write your politician in office, tons of letters, tons of phone calls every day. Everybody become an activist for what you believe in. The problem is, now you see what happened in DC in January. You have a bunch of Republicans went to a 94% blue state, and whatever protest they had, they are surrounded by people who does not like them. They are not going to catch a break by the justice system. They're going to get screwed the hard way. Regardless if they did anything right or wrong, they're going to get screwed and buried. You cannot go into your enemy's backyard, surround yourself, if you're surrounded by people who hate you and doesn't believe what you believe in, and then demonstrate, because it's not going to be a good day. No. Except if you are on the extreme left, you can apparently demonstrate and burn down people's buildings and houses and towns everywhere.
That's called a peaceful protest.
Peaceful protest.
However,
it's nice and pretty.
However, you're allowed. Okay.
Mostly peaceful, but fiery, but mostly peaceful.
No. Here's the loot rules. Okay, so you can loot, You can burn down buildings, but you cannot honk horns for any length of time.
Huh? I have not heard that one.
Well, okay, Ottawa and the convoy.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah.
You can't honk horns. That's cruelty beyond a shadow of a doubt. That is absolute cruelty and inhumane.
Yes. You're basically honking means you're a Nazi, right? I think.
Yeah. So you can burn down things and you can loot things, but if you get a semi truck and you start hitting that air horn, well, that's just a crime against humanity, don't you know?
I mean, didn't one of your wonderful politicians up there came up with the truckers and say that if a honking mean is a Nazi salute now? Yep.
Oh no, it's anti-Semitic.
I mean, I remember. I remember seeing
an anagram for something that's anti-Semitic, apparently.
Good. I'll tell that to my Jewish friends to make sure they don't use the horn twice. And I remember clearly videos from the 30s where Hitler and Goebbels was just cruising the neighborhoods of Berlin, honking wildly. There's no common sense anymore. Now you have racist body language. You have the one more asinine thing after the other, and it's all just a distraction from the conversation we should be having. I would actually like to see something like GB News have an American version, like all AB News, US News, where you can actually have honest conversations about the country and raise these things in a more hard-hitting way, because this needs to start with middle-of-the-road conservatives getting hold of more media and actually fighting back. And the same reason why all these Marxist professors have been able to indoctrinate our children. And I would hate to be 20, 21, 22 and hearing this, because I'm telling you that a lot of what you believe, if you're 20 years old coming out of American college, is probably false. It is probably wrong. You have probably built your worldview on a lie. And that's hard. That's hard for anybody to hear, that what you believe in. But you may have to entertain the thought, looking around you in the future, that you may have been misled somewhat. And we can't let this just continue. But it's been going on for all these years unchallenged. No one ever challenged this outright communist suggestion. Why on earth are there Chinese departments in American colleges, Confucius Institutes, preaching the Chinese communist way of life in our American colleges? Why does Harvard have a Sharia law department? I am just saying, I'm asking a question. Why is it that we have a supposed Western democracy that's based on judicial law and independent individual freedom, and we are allowing alien trains of thought that runs counter to our legal beliefs or our laws teach in our colleges and education institutions? I do not understand this, but maybe someone can explain.
Supposed to be accepting and understanding of all cultures and all creeds, and well, the problem with that is, sooner or later you run into a problem.
One,
which is conflict of interest. Just saying, because nobody's willing to make a stand anymore. Making a stand is wrong. If you listen to anybody speak about anything, it's always vague. It's as vague as they possibly can make it, because nobody is willing to stand there and go, this is what it is. Like it, lump it, leave it. They're too busy being as vague as possible so that they can back out, change topic on a whim, and change side in a whim, whichever one's going to make sure that they stay in power. Because the modern view is you can't take a stand, because the minute you do, well, you might be on the wrong side and then you're going to lose. And people have this thing that you can't lose. Fucking up is bad. And I've never understood that. The way I look at it is, if you don't make a mistake, how the fuck do you know you got it right? And the problem with the modern vernacular is you got to be right 100% of the time, and you can never be wrong.
I completely forgot Mr. Canadian there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was never a big race car fan.
Oh, no, I gotta go.
Well, it's just a whole bunch of left turns, isn't it? I'm just kidding.
No. That's IndyCar. They have road courses. He's from Canada.
I was too busy with knives on my feet on ice with a stick.
His family owns K-Line Insulators.
Okay. But yeah, it's just for me. I just look at everything and it's crazy because it's kind of trickled down into everything. If you go into fandoms, doesn't matter what they are. It used to be fun to have Star Trek versus Star Wars fans. It used to be fun. Now it's just annoying. Because there's no good conversations anymore. There's just none, because you have to be right and you can't move. You can't budge. You can't go, well, okay, I agree with 50% of what you said, and the other 50%, we're just going to have to agree to disagree because I can't get that far. But I can go 50% with you. You don't get that anymore. Either they're entrenched in their dogma or their position, and there's no moving them no matter what. If they say the sky is blue and you show them that the sky is red, they'll look at you straight in the face and tell you the sky is blue. But it just, to me, it's crazy. And like I said before, I mean, we look at everything the wrong way. We're too busy focused on the little stuff, and the big stuff, well, just gets by us. Because we're too busy infighting, for one. We're too busy arguing about stuff that doesn't really matter. And it's like, you could explain it like this. There's a group of people that are starving to death, and they're more worried about what color the trees are.
Yes. Well, there will be.
And the other thing, too, which I find funny, is people take things. If you're a person of distinct, like if you're accredited source, like CNN, Fox, whatever, pick your poison. Whatever they say, they take at face value. I always found it funny because if you follow logic, you find out that a lot of the stuff you're being told is probably a bunch of hooey, such as, oh, we have a food shortage. Really? If we have a food shortage, Tino, if there's a shortage of a commodity, what's the first thing the government's going to do to that commodity?
Blame it on President Trump. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, what are they going to do to that commodity?
They're going to buy all parts of it and ration it.
They're gonna regulate it up the ass.
Of course.
Right?
Make it more expensive than possible to get.
If there's a true shortage of something, they're going to regulate that shit up the yin-yang. Right?
Yeah.
So if there's a food shortage and you want me to buy this, then explain to me why Safeway, Superstore, any of these big food chains can throw away thousands of pounds of food a day.
Same reason that the EU keeps regulating farmers to make less food, less meat, less cattle.
Yeah.
Yes. The food shortage that is now happening and will happen increasingly given these green policies, I am hoping in the back of my mind will wake people up to the fact that they really need to put their foot down.
They want us back in the
because
Stone Age.
as you are reducing fertilizer to farmers, like in Holland, they're buying up farmlands for forcing the farmers out of business. You are literally shutting down the farms that are feeding the world, uh, blaming it all on the poor cows, which means that there will be food shortage. I mean, we have created a policy over the past couple of years, been implemented, that will create shortages and food shortages. And when you see people like Bill Gates, who's now the biggest landowner in America, who wants us all to eat synthetic meat and grasshoppers, which is something he clearly stated. I'm just not making this up. Like I saw Ukraine just started shipping out some grain, but it's a little late for next year. We will be running out of food. Europe will run out of food, and it'll be very, very cold. And if that does not wake people up, then we really are doomed. And if that's I don't know how much more we had a couple of years ago. We had everything we ever wanted. We were on the upswing. We had enough gas and oil, and we were fine. And by the way, fewer people were dying from climate interference because we have so much more technology dealing with it. And if the climate is changing, regardless why it's changing. But we have far more ways of dealing with it. And killing all our cows and shutting down all our power plants will just kill people. That's just going to be a fact. So while the people are willing to do that, we'll see. I hope people want to be free and happy and feed their children. And that's kind of what I'm hoping. And
enjoy your rolling brownouts.
I know. I mean, I'm an optimist. I'm hoping that there's enough parents that really don't want their children to starve to death.
Well, but see, all they need is to be told that it's for the greater good.
Yeah,
the biggest lie
the greater good is usually the second biggest killer of people in the world.
And 1984 rolls in.
Right? Yeah, it's for the greater good. Think of anything that's bad that's happened in the last 20 years. What's the first thing that's said?
Government.
For the greater good.
Yeah.
The vaccine for the greater good.
Yeah.
Right?
And now you're going to tie your credit score to your social media score to, are you buying cows? Well, that's a bad score. You can't have a loan. Oh, you want to buy a gun? Well, you can't free up your money in the bank for that. You're going to tie all these digital institutions together like China does. Oh, well, we don't like your policy, so you can't travel. And people, they don't seem to understand. This is where this is going. It's being done in China as we speak. It's being done by the people who are implementing and apparently dictating policies to America and the West.
Right.
It is painfully obvious for even people who doesn't pay much attention to see where this is going, to see where these policies are going, to tie your green score to your credit score, to your bank account, to your freedom or lack of freedom. Yeah. Anybody can see this, and I'm sorry, but it is not the dull, patriotic conservatives around the world that is pushing this. They might be afraid to talk about it or counter it because they might lose their job.
And you're forgetting the whole cashless society thing too. They want to do that because they want to know every single dime. That's the anchor point.
Yeah. And you see that around Europe. You've seen that there's a lot of banks in Europe now that won't even take cash, or banks that have cash. However, they've been messing that up. The Germans had a big visa problem, reverting back to having to use more cash, and now you've got the FTX thing. You say, well, this is what happens to digital currency. It can disappear really quick, and now you're going to start doing like they did with the Greek and other governments in trouble. You're going to limit how much cash you can take out of your account. That's going to go over really well in Germany or in America or somewhere else. Oh, no, you can only cash out $500. They're already doing it in England. You can only take out so and so much. Here, in America, you can only take out so and so much before the bank asks you why, because the government wants to know. And every time I take out more money than that limit is, and they ask me, why do you need it? I said, for drugs and hookers. And they always look at me, what? Well, the IRS wants to know, you said. I mean, and that is the insanity. It is the complete top-heavy centralized control. That is really not something anybody wants except the 1% who's in that circle. And everyone else is being used to believe this. And hey, I always said I'm so happy that I'm at the age I am, where hopefully I will die before it gets really bad. And the way this has sped up the last 2 years, I'm like, God damn it, I have to fight this crap because it's going to happen while I'm still alive.
Right.
I did not ask for this.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone. How hard is that? Ooh, we'll see. So I'm hoping that people, they want to be free and want to know more, because what we're asking for is really not much. It's not even a political agenda. It's just, do you not want to be free? Do you not want your kids to be happy? Although a lot of these globalists, they actually don't have kids, so I guess that's not a big deal. It's just, people really have to start waking up before it's too late, because we are absolutely at the 11th hour. And sun is setting fast. And I'm just annoyed that I have to actually, at some point in time, go deal with it. I did not think 2 years ago, I did not think I was going to have to put on a damn uniform and be deployed in my own town in America. I did not think I would have to see that day. I know now that day is coming back.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot more of it. I will be deployed in this country again. And that scares the hell out of me, because it never needed to come this far. Of course, I have to figure out what state this is going to happen in. But there. And you look at yesterday, a couple of days ago, 20 police cadets were run over by one guy here in LA. And some of them were injured pretty bad. And the next day, the guy was released on bail.
Yeah.
I'm just so if you want your law enforcement to protect you, I think it's fairly certain to say that what is their motivation by now for doing that? Because who's protecting them? Who's watching over them? Hang on.
Well, it's just like the old,
he knows that you guys are coming out. I already talked to him.
Especially here in Canada.
Right? Yeah, I saw him. His friend is next door. Gotcha.
Especially here in Canada, you get there was, and this goes back about 10 years. You'll have RCMP officers, talk about, whether they want to bother pulling their gun.
Yeah.
Because the paperwork involved. Yeah, you could have stopped that crime, but I would have had to pull my gun. And do you have any idea how much of a pain in the ass that is? Even if I don't shoot the darn thing, do you know how much of a pain in the ass it is that I have to justify that I pulled my gun?
Mm-hmm. I mean, after the riots, I pulled my application from LAPD, not because I did not want, but because I was initially at the impression that I wanted to come in and serve. I really wanted. I would like to have been a police officer if I could have done something about drug dealers or violence against women, or done. Even at this late stage in my aging life, nearing the twilight of death, I actually, for a few minutes, had the idealism that I could maybe do something with what I have learned. And then I looked around and I saw what was going on, and I realized that was never going to happen. There's nothing I could have done to help anybody, even in uniform, because the people in uniform, what does it matter if you're not allowed to go after the rapists, the drug dealers, the gangs, and if you arrest them, they'll be let loose the next day. What's the point? And that is sad. So all you have left is now hoping that people will individually bind together in I'm not going to say vigilante groups, but it's the wrong group, but the wrong term. But all you can do now is hope that societies, small communities, will bond together and keep, because we can't save the country, but maybe we can save our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's what we individually now have to do, is look small. Maybe we can save our school. Maybe we can save our neighborhood. Maybe we can save our neighbor if they call for help. That's all we got. That is all we have got left.
Yeah.
Because they are not coming.
I do want to thank chat for keeping with us. You get three guys that like to yap, and we forget to mention.
Anybody still awake out there? My God.
We kind of ignored chat for the most part, and I apologize for that. But you get three people who like to talking, And well, oh darn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the panel one last time. We're going to give our final thoughts, I think, and then what we'll do is we'll do this again, and maybe on Lost Battlefields Discord we can set up questions to a place to drop questions, and then on that stream we could address the questions, and well, it'd be more me asking them and people who know more than I do answering them, namely Tino. So I'm throwing
Anybody asking any? Are there any questions?
Well, I think
you're the one with the finger on the button. I'm just seeing the chat out there. I can't touch it.
So what I think we'll do is we'll when we're done this later on this evening, I'll put a place in Tino's Discord. If you want to join Tino's Discord and you're not on Tino's Discord, go to lostbattlefields.com, go to the chat section, and there should be a link to the Discord, and then join the Discord, and then you'll have all the fun information. There's also my Discord. I have two of them, History with R&Rs and also Rambling Canucks, where this will be kind of cross-posted, I guess. And we'll give it about a week or so, let people kind of drop their questions, and then we'll meet back up, and we'll kind of try to stick to a more formatted show.
I mean, we didn't have a topic starting with, did we?
Yeah, and then we kind of went south, east, west.
We had a topic? Was there a topic?
No, not really.
That's what I thought.
No, we followed our form, which is all over the place. We went exactly where we needed to go.
Yeah. We took the long way. So what I'll do is I'll create a spot in the Discord for that, and then over the course of the week, I'll probably 2 weeks, we'll meet back here and we'll discuss it again, and we'll try to get as many of them done, and maybe we'll even add Crystal to the panel, and we'll let all everything go right crazy.
So I have a question for the two of you. What do we want to see next week? I need a little more reading for the V sites. I think that's going to be Christmas, December, romance. That just to me says German special weapons sites. So,
that works.
I'm romantic that way. It's bunkers, missiles, rockets, and superguns.
Yeah, things that go boom.
That leaves us this weekend.
I'm also okay with it because the conventionals and stuff.
Exactly. So next week, I mean, we could. What have I got? We could do the huge huge forts around Metz that we weren't allowed to go into. So I did it anyway because they're collapsing. I think that's fun. I could. What do we got? I did the part about Fort Cassel. Nobody's seen. Epidemal. All the wet. That's going to take too long. That's going to take a lot. I don't know. I don't know what to do with you. World War One, World War Two. Got a World War One fort. Running out of time. What do you guys want to see? What am I doing? What goes for Thanksgiving?
Well, speaking for the Canadian room, you guys are late. We already had ours.
That's just the enemy like turkeys. I mean,
back in October, but just
damn fascist, nonconformist.
So what we'll do is we'll reconvene in a week or two, depending on Tino's schedule, and I will create a section in Tino's Discord, and we'll go from there.
One you can only get to if you join Lost Battlefields.
Well, yes.
Yes, that one.
And I got to give myself more work, somehow. I don't know why.
Yes, you are doing all the technical work now.
Yeah, I kind of got voluntold into that, which is why if you go on Discord and you see the title above my name, it's called voluntold.
It will be reflected in your lack of Christmas gift parcel.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think Tino, if I got a package from you, I'd check to make sure it wasn't ticking. But anyway,
it might be digital. I'm not sure. I will say coming up when he's up to it will be live into the David Irving.
Awesome.
I thought so.
All right, and with that, folks, I'm gonna say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us, and once again, I apologize to chat for us basically ignoring you for 3 hours. We're gonna try to do this better next time. And with that, take her easy, folks.